Hello everybody and welcome back to the English Open, and it's the big one. It's the final between Zhou Yuelong and Mark Allen, the world number 32 up against the world number 10, the player that is yet to make his way up to the first maiden ranking event title against the one who's won 11 of those, including 3 triple crowns there in Mark Allen. What a battle we've got on our hands, and a complete repeat there of their home tournament for Mark Allen in Northern Ireland Open 3 years ago, as these two are going to battle for the Steve Davis Trophy here in Brentwood. But until then, let's go back to history. And it's a brilliant performance, and it's a brilliant campaign from both of these players already. Zhou Yuelong has managed to beat Mark Selby yesterday, was up against Luca Brazil, Mark Williams, Barry Hawkins, and he's still managed to defeat all of those players. Mark Allen himself has been the comeback king, and coming back from being 4-0 down against Elias Lesser, coming back from 3-0 down against Ding Zhuo, until he had to battle from being 5-3 down in his battle against Jack Jones yesterday. Brilliant encounter on our hands, and it's an absolute chaos against control. Very similar sort of battle for Zhou Yuelong in terms of the style that he's going to be up against. If you compare that to Mark Selby and the semi-final clashes, we're waiting for the players to come out and onto the main action table. The referee is going to be Kevin Dubrovsky here, as it's going to be his first time he's going to try and referee final in the ranking event of snooker. And well, let's get the party started here. We're about to welcome Mark Allen into the arena. And one stat I will tell you though, we already had 34 deciders in this campaign until the final. It is the first time we're going to see their best of 17 in this season, after having best of 21, best of 19 in Shanghai Masters, Saudi Arabia, Wuhan Open. It is now the return of Home Nation Series, as Mark Allen will make his way onto the arena. And certainly, let's get this party started. Score prediction, I will say, first session, we're going to take it session by session there, because ultimately I will tell you who I think they will win the entire campaign and win his maiden title here. A little bit of a spoiler, it is going to be Zhou Yuelong for me. As for now, the players will shake hands and pose for a picture in front of a brilliant Steve Davis trophy. I mean, what a name to have on the trophy, and potentially to get your hands on the trophy. Let's see now, 12 deciders. Certainly looking forward to that. Not 12 deciders, come on. I thought you meant in this frame for them, in this match for them to try and play. It has been 34 deciders already in this campaign. I've done maths myself. You can't fool me. And it is going to be Zhou Yuelong to get us underway in the opening frame. And of course, out of those 34 deciders, Mark Allen, well, it feels like he featured at least 10 of them, beating Scott Donaldson. And in the third round that he mentioned, and has managed to feature himself ever since. It has been a massive scrap of battles. As I say, Ding Zhuo being the first one, Elias Lesser second, and Jack Jones running up the trio there. That Mark Allen had to dig deep there, and certainly would have used some of his power and some of the effort that, you know, Zhou Yuelong has actually managed to save until the final. Managed to beat Barry Hawkins with 4-2 of a scoreline. Mark Williams with a scoreline of 4 frames to 1, winning 4 frames on the bounce in each of those matches. So as I say, I think he had to play a lot less of the table time. Both of the semi-finals have been over 5 hours since they started, and the clash between Jack Jones and Mark Allen has finished exactly on the midnight. So that was the perfect one for you to try and witness. You know, in the end, it was a straightforward decider win for Mark Allen, but it hasn't been a straightforward campaign, and now he will be trying to get himself on the board here. Yes, Pistolero against the Leaping Dragon. Well, I mean, the world number 32 and the world number 10 doesn't tell you the whole story. I'm certainly looking forward to see the way this match is going to unfold. Is Mark Allen going to try and be on the front foot here, or is he going to try and force the safety side of snooker and be up against the powerhouse, the aggressive style, the Leaping Dragon, Zhou Yuelong here, as he will already move himself up to the world number 30, with Mark Allen probably guaranteeing himself to move up into the top 10 and become the world number 9. But it's potentially top 25 available for Zhou Yuelong and top 7 available for Mark Allen should either of them be victorious today. For now, it's Zhou Yuelong that is looking for a shot into the left corner. No picture spot on there. Not going to picture on that because the rights are still owned by TNT Sports here in the UK, Eurosport in mainland Europe, and not too sure about other regions. But you can try and watch the whole action on either of the channels that I just mentioned, or Discovery Plus, WST TV is going to be another option for you. And this tournament has the record number of deciders. Has it? I mean, it's not surprising to be fair, because surely you're going to have that when it's quite a short format, with us not getting into the best of 9 only until the quarterfinal stage, progressing to the best of 11 yesterday into the semi-finals, and now of course have got a final on our hands of best of 17. As I mentioned, for the first time we've seen that in this tour start to the season, but we're going to see an attempt now of a long shot for Mark Allen. So is he going to try and put himself ahead in this frame and get on the score sheet, get the first spot of the final years? So it's a perfect start there for him, as he will get himself on the black here into the right corner. And once again, it's a lovely start now. No video. Well, exactly the reason. No picture, no video there for you. As I say, the broadcasting channels will own that and very much strike back if you try and copyright those, which I'm not going to do for obvious reasons. But for now, Mark Allen is on the break of 8 points, has got a lot of reds available to him, and for now at least a couple of those into the right corner, and he's just going to have a quick chat there with the referee, with one of the lights there blinded by him. So Mark Allen blinded by the lights here in the opening frame, and a little bit of a delay in the game straight away as we try to get the referee to sort that one out. And of course that's a chance for us to try and talk about the position that Mark Allen actually finds himself in. Has got a red to try and play into the right corner, then get himself on the black for probably a sequence of those shots. One more into the left middle, probably 2 more that he can try and take on after this red into the right corner. So all in all, not looking too bad for him either, but for now the delay still has to be resolved. And well, we'll see. I mean, talk about the record number of deciders. Are we going to see the 35th one? Because that's the way Mark Allen has been grinding out results and beating his opponents at the last second of the encounter. As the light failure, and well, the adjustment still hasn't finished. Referee keeping an eye on that, and Mark Allen has gone back to his chair. So joining Zhou Yuelong here. And in terms of the colours here, so the pink once again is actually out in position, not quite on his spot, but he's going to be available for Allen to play once he frees up the pink spot itself. And it will be a reasonable idea for him to try and get the pink back on his position. 9 points now for Mark Allen. And as he gets the break underway for the second time here, after a little bit of a disruption and delay. Of course, he wouldn't want the same thing that's happened earlier in the semi-final against Jack Jones, with the referee Desislava Bojilova and Mark Allen trying to sort out the cloth there. That, you know, has been the source of complaints from all sorts of players. Jackson Page, Elias Lesser, Judd Trump, Mark Selby, Zhou Yuelong himself, Luca Brissell and Mark Allen. Just some of the names that have already been complaining about the cloth situation, but hopefully, you know, some measures would have been taken into account until the final. And we're about to see the positive side of things, as Mark Allen will just roll the cue ball on towards the blue here. In fact, he'll try to force his way out, get himself a nice little angle on this colour. So he can try and potentially land in behind this red into the left middle there. He's got a couple of those that are available, and if he doesn't want to do that, he's got a red into the left corner to give him a little bit of a breathing space as well. Live on TNT Sports too. Yes, so if you're watching in the UK, you can do that on the TNT Sports, Eurosport, TNT in the mainland, and WST TV for any other region. You can check that out by Going to the main Snooker website, for now the cue ball will have to be forced to this red into the left corner. And once again, Mark Allen doesn't find himself struggling for the Reds to try and pick out here, which has been a positive start for him yesterday against Jack Jones. You know, the first 4 frames have actually been quite quick, but when we got to frames 6 and 7, that's when the safety battle was taking some of the time there in between the players, but in the end, neither wanted to give an inch to each other. And right now, we're finding Mark Allen facing himself with a decent position in the opening frame. As I say, it's far from over. Still a lot of work for him to try and do, but so far so good. And still just freeing up some of those reds that are going to go into the left corner. And one of those will disappear shortly after the blue will disappear himself into the right middle. So I think for the next couple of shots, Mark Allen will probably transition the cue ball back to the blue there. Just give himself more breathing space as long as he doesn't end up with too much angle on the blue. I think it's easier to try and get from the middle pocket shot into one of those reds into the right corner, which seems to be the only corner that those 3 that are available to Allen are going to disappear. So certainly doing that from the first time of asking, but wants to roll through there for the black, so clearly thinking that he can either try and take the red into left middle, or he'll have enough angle to himself to force the cue ball way around the table and put himself nicely onto the red into the right corner. So now 37 points for Mark Allen. About to make that 34 here, and has indeed gone for a shot into the middle, but underscrewed slightly, and will put himself with a little bit of a difficult cut into the left middle. Once again, the blue or the ball colours will certainly be found here, so it's all about getting the pot in and concentrating on that side of the play here. As for now, he'll try to roll this one in with dead pace, and he'll get it, and he'll get himself a brilliant angle on the blue. So only 1 shot away from getting the first 50 plus break in this encounter, something that we haven't really seen in the encounter between Zhou Yuelong and Mark Selby yesterday, but certainly I've seen in between Mark Allen and Jack Jones, and a brilliant shot there from Mark Allen to surely get himself a clear path onto the opening frame on his board. Gets the cue ball nicely into the reds, lands himself on one into the left corner, and once again, with just forcing one more shot onto the blue there, he'll be within striking distance there of getting himself on the red. That is going to be the last one he'll need to make sure that Zhou Yuelong have to settle for a defeat in the opening frame. For now, overscrewed slightly there for the blue, so we'll use the green into its own pocket. And the cue ball will be screwed back into the danger area once again. It's got a nice little red into the right corner for Mark Allen, so certainly a shot with the rest needed, but as I say, just roll this one in, and the natural cue ball power will be enough for you to have a nice little shot into the left corner for the black. In terms of the head-to-head between the two players, it is looking very nicely for Mark Allen so far, with him taking 3 wins out of 3 in the 3 matches that have been played between the two. First one has came in the World Championship in 2020, so 5 years ago almost. Well, actually more than 5 years, because that would have been the season ender. So 5 seasons and a half, I would say. And that was the last 32, so that was the first round. And Allen managed to win that by 10 frames to 4. Very comfortable win, 10 frames to 7, I should say. With a very comfortable win in the Northern Ireland final to come his way a few seasons later. In between that, I had one more last 32 encounter in the Scottish Masters, as Allen once again dispatches the red and black combination really nicely, landing himself on the red into the right corner. And yeah, of course, one of the 5 ranking finals that Zhou Yuelong actually had in his career, 2020 onwards, was against Mark Allen, and it was his own tournament in the Northern Ireland Open. In the end, Allen managed to win that final by 9 frames to 4. And, well, the TNT stuff have been saying that it probably didn't represent the picture. I can't really comment on that, because I didn't watch the final, or if I did, I don't really necessarily remember it. But what I can tell you is Allen was absolutely on form in the second session, winning almost 5 frames in a row there at some point. Something that we've seen Allen do a lot here as he puts the frame ball on the pink and gets himself nicely and away in this opening frame. So a break of 70 to start off here and try and potentially get a century break on the board as well. Finally, we'll have the pink on his spot after ignoring it for the first couple of shots. And once again, the broadcast just demonstrating a brilliant long shot that he managed to take on into the right corner. In the end, gets himself a chance to have 77 points on the board. As once again, he rolls another pink in. So the 3 available reds are certainly available for him for the century break and lined up brilliantly. As the first one of the 3 will disappear. Certainly GG's. Hopefully we're going to see 17 GG's as we've seen in Wuhan Open and Saudi Arabian Masters. Not quite in the battle of Ali Carter against Karen Wilson, with that one ending 1 frame short of a decider. And you can barely keep up with Mark Allen, certainly finding his form here. And one of the most dangerous players when he does that, in terms of taking so little time in between the shots. And we only had about 15 minutes since we started the opening frame, and it already is 1 shot away now, Mark Allen, from making it a century break on the board, and a brilliant century break. You know, as I say, perfect. Wants to get on the blue, set himself up for a total clearance here. And I mean, what a way to do that in the opening frame. Certainly a confidence boost, as 105 points scored already. So a total clearance possible of 132. Now we'll, well, make their higher break than the one they managed to produce. Yuelong against Mark Selby by far in the semi-final in the opening frame here. So with all 5 colours being on the spots here, certainly would expect to see a total clearance for Mark Allen, and a brilliant way to start off this final. Yuelong has another sip of the bottle there to probably get himself through the early struggles. As I say, the last thing I personally expected was Mark Allen to be back to his best in the opening frame. I certainly expected him to take a little bit of time on that, and Yuelong trying to do some damage early hasn't been the story so far, and it's a brilliant story for Mark Allen. And 125 points now on the black into the right corner. Just roll this one in and watch it disappear. Certainly deserves all the applause from the crowd, and it's a brilliant start now to this final, with Mark Allen getting himself a frame on the board against Yuelong. He was a favourite going into this final by the odds of 1.5 to his name, with Yuelong having 2.5 for him to win his first ranking event title. Of course, that will shift slightly into the favour of Mark Allen, but still a lot to play for, and it's certainly the great start and well, I mean, potentially the best possible start for Mark Allen. I mean, anything better than that would probably be a maximum, and you know, a whitewash of 10 frames to nil, which, to be fair, I say that in a joking manner, but the first ranking event title of Yuelong has actually finished with a whitewash. You know, it was the European Masters in 2020, and Neil Robertson has managed to whitewash him with 10 frames to nil there. So Mark Allen is 10% there, I would say, but certainly he's on his way to at least get himself some sort of cushion going into the next couple of frames. And now an answer needed from Yuelong, as it will be Mark Allen to break off in a couple of moments' time. Yuelong needs to make sure he steps up his safety game, doesn't leave any more invitations like the red to the right corner for Allen to try and take on. And well, what are we going to see in this second frame? Is it going to be more of the same? Is Allen going to try to be on the front foot himself? Or is Yuelong going to come back into this match with a brilliant performance of his own in the second frame? We're about to witness the start of this, but certainly very, very appealing, and nice to see Mark Allen being on the front foot there. You know, it was a couple of reds that, you know, not necessarily sure if you're going to take on. Certainly the starter was a bit more difficult than some of the shots that Mark Allen had himself to start off the frame break. In the end, just a couple of moments away from starting the second frame, and Mark Allen to break off this time around, of course. As the referee will let him know shortly that it's time to do that. And once again, the stand is back there in behind the players and in and around them, certainly. And on the TNT broadcast, you could actually see the announcer asking who was the crowd favourite. Probably a weird thing for you to ask when we are in the United Kingdom, even though it is England and Northern Ireland, the country that is hosting the tournament, and Mark Cullen that is actually representing Northern Ireland himself. But still, to be fair to Zhou Yuelong, there were quite a lot of cheers for his name. So probably 60-40 in favour of Alan in terms of the crowd support, but certainly 60-40 for the opening 4 frames, with Alan getting the first one on the board. Now Zhou Yuelong has to get himself started in this final, which something that he didn't manage to do in the opening frame. Starts off with a decent safety shot, rolls the red onto the top part of the table, and lands Alan with a couple of reds to try and choose himself that he can try and take on as his safety approach. Certainly having a look at the plant potentially into the right corner. Probably the only chance that you can try and consider attacking. I still don't think he will take that shot on, with the cue ball going heavily into the bunch of reds. But still, even though I was thinking it was a straightforward safety shot for Mark Allen, he's certainly taking his time here. And that suggests to me that he actually is trying to find a way to get this plant into the right corner. Get himself started in the second frame as well, and potentially try and finish it off with a similar manner to the first one. There's still no decision made. Having looked at the plant for probably the 10th time already, and in terms of the reds, there's one available onto the top part of the table that I think Alan eventually will try and play. Send it towards the bulk area and down the table. Get the cue ball in behind one of those colours, or just closer to the yellow pocket himself. So in the end, goes for a straightforward safety shot. Mark Allen just probably wanted to make sure he doesn't actually give away that plan to Zhou Yuelong, and has managed to cover the risk of doing that by having a couple of more reds in the way of the cue ball. And just a red onto the top part of the table for Zhou Yuelong to try and roll potentially into the corner pocket or in and around it. In the end, finds a decent shot to get the red somewhat safe, but the cue ball seems to be lacking pace majorly. And Mark Allen will have initiative at his grasp, with the cue ball not needing and not necessarily having to cover as much distance as Zhou Yuelong had to. Once again, looking at the plant into the right corner, which I mentioned for the 20th time already, has got one more just underneath the pink. So if he takes one of those two on, could certainly be a great starter for him. But that plan that he's actually looking at seems to be very, very complicated in terms of the cue ball position. And of course, you still have to try and get the red in, something that Mark Allen hasn't managed to do. In the end, the cue ball was probably not lined up on any of the colours, but missing the red has certainly put Zhou Yuelong into some sort of advantage, or has it, with Allen playing the way there from the main action, sending the cue ball towards the bulk area. Can Zhou Yuelong get through to that red? And if he can't, he's got a massive safety now on his hands to try and get himself safe there, not show the cue ball that red into the right corner. So a massive shot for him straight away to start off, as Mark Cullen misses a shot into the right corner. Zhou Yuelong will try and roll another red in towards the right corner, but surprised to see him catching the red so thick there. In the end, will give out one of those reds away into the right corner for Mark Allen. But I don't think he'll want to take this red on, to be fair, with it being quite far from the pocket area himself. And if you are going to try and land on any of the colours, surely it has to be pink or blue here, with the black being covered up by the red into the right corner for sure. Not too sure about the left corner though, as we're about to find out. By the way, who will win session 1? 120 votes already. Thank you very much for everyone joining in. And Zhou Yuelong has got 53%. Zhou is 66%, with not too many going for a 4-4 scoreline ahead of session 2. And Mark Allen has got 41% of the votes. Certainly the number that will rise after I'm winning the opening frame here. He's now looking to line up another red into the right corner. Massive shot once again. Needs to get it. And also needs to try and get himself onto the colour. Where's this red going to finish? Is he going to fluke it? No, he's not. But is he going to give it away? He certainly will give one of those reds away into the left middle. In the end, it's the first chance now that goes the way of Zhou Yuelong. So after a little bit of a safety battle, we've got a potential break battle on our hands. Zhou Yuelong will just roll one of those reds into the right corner, try and get himself on the black here, but needs to be perfect. As I say, there was a very marginal room for him to try and play, with the black certainly being covered up at the moment for the right corner, but available into the left with the room that Zhou Yuelong's managed to find. Squeezes the black in, ultimately takes one of those reds away off the black spot, and he's now getting himself 8 points clear now. And on the very promising break now, Zhou Yuelong, something that could have been Mark Allen for the taking in the second frame, but instead it is going to be his opponent, the world number 30, as you can call them already, with getting 45,000 ranking points, either one of the players that will lose the final. So both of them guaranteed that number. But the reason they're here today is to fight for the trophy, and a check for $100,000 will be a nice little bonus on top of the trophy. As I mentioned, Mark Allen has got 11 of those, 3 of which came into the Triple Crown events. Zhou Yuelong is still looking for his maiden one after making the final 5 times. Well, for the 5th time yesterday against Mark Selby, with a brilliant clash. In the end, got himself on the fortunate side at some point. Certainly not going to suggest that was the reason he won. He was playing the better snooker throughout the majority of the match, and ultimately winning the 3 opening frames. Has played a massive role in that encounter. For now, rolls the black into the left corner pocket and switch of the play. We'll follow up the red into the opposite side of the table. And nicely done there once again by Zhou here. Cannons the cue ball into the bunch of reds. Will free up a couple of those to take on into the left corner. And this time, once again, roll the black in very, very nicely. Get himself onto one more red into the right corner. So the red goes in the left corner and the black will follow up in the right corner there. And once again, a switch of the play. And the opposite way of things to follow up, with the red now being sent in towards the right corner, and the black will probably go in the opposite side of the table. So in terms of the chance for Zhou Yuelong to try and win the frame from this visit, it's certainly looking good in terms of him being on the break of 33 points already. He has still got 5 reds or so to try and make his way through. That will leave Mark Allen with only 67 on the table, should Zhou Yuelong dispatch all 5 reds that I'm talking about after this black with some expensive colours. They'll certainly get him on the verge of winning the second frame and being nicely on the way in this encounter with Mark Allen. For now, gets himself 40 points on the board, and now has to face a little bit of a decision with which red is actually going to be the next for Zhou Yuelong to go for. Trying to send one into the left middle, screw back on the black once again, use the cushion to his advantage maybe, and try and get in behind the red. In the end, didn't want to do that, but has landed pretty awkwardly on this black here, so will hope to see himself with a little bit of an angle, try and get the cue ball up the table, and onto one of those reds into the right corner. Once again, has screwed up nicely, and has actually landed himself on one of the reds into the right corner here, so nicely done there. Zhou versus Allen, a 2-player with insanely tactical skill in snooker. Well, I mean, I will agree with you on that one in terms of Allen. I have to say, I'm not necessarily going to describe Zhou Yuelong as the most tactical player. I think he's more of being a brilliant and a fluent player in terms of the way he plays the game, being so smooth. I'm yet to see the tactical side of the game against, I've watched his game against Williams, Brissell, Selby, and now against Allen. Not necessarily seeing him get through all those safety battles, win the winner. But in the end, he has got him through to the final. And he's now finding himself on the break of 56 points. So, to be fair, and one thing that you should mention with it being the final, It is now 7 reds with 7 blacks here for Zhou Yuelong. And still, very much with the possibility of a potential, and I will say potential, 147. So the black will make it 64 points. 2 more reds will surely get him over the line in the frame. And then he can try and dream about certainly having the century break in the second frame. And having one of those players, well, basically both of them, have a century break in quick succession. But for now, of course, the eyes of Zhou Yuelong are going to be on winning the opening frame here. So 2 more reds, as I say, to do that. 3 more shots to get himself over the frame line. And over the frame ball line, I should say. Nice little angle on this black to try and get in behind the red. Either for the corner of the right hand side or the left. And get himself through to, well, a dream start to the second frame. It certainly hasn't been a dream start to the match here. But what a mistake that is, and what a blunder from Zhou Yuelong. Just as I say, he was a couple of shots away from winning the second frame. But in the end, he misses the black into the left corner. And he'll give away this chance to Mark Allen. So, a break of 65 is not going to mean a lot to him if he actually finds himself on the receiving end once again here against Mark Allen. Well, you talk about the comebacking and you talk about those mistakes, as I say, fine margins. There was nothing wrong with the positional shot previously on the black. He was playing absolutely perfect there in terms of the cue ball control, but takes his eye off the pot there, misses the black significantly into the left corner, and all of a sudden it is Mark Allen that gets himself in with a chance to roll the red into the right corner here. Try and get himself nicely on the cue ball into the blue that he can try and afford here, but ideally we would like to see himself going to the lower part of reds and lands really straight on this blue. And if he's got any sort of angle, he's going to send the cue ball up the table, not down. But he's, of course, still safe on points, so you can try and go for the blue here and roll this one in. Go for the safety on the 5 reds available. And he's still not out of this frame. You know, should have been out. Certainly will say that. Zhou Yuelong was 2 shots away from actually making him go out of the frame and make it a 1 frame each. Instead, looks like we're going to see a bat on our hands as the percentage of Mark Allen is actually reduced there, despite him winning the opening frame. And Zhou Yuelong performing well to an extent there, but let's see if Mark Allen is actually going to take this brown or any of the colours on. Or is he going to try and leave Zhou Yuelong with a potential difficult shot to try and play with the reds being all bunched up really closely, and that's exactly what he's done. Playing the cue ball into the brown, gets himself 64 points behind the 67 on the table, so certainly putting all of the eggs in one basket. That he's going to get a clean chance here. Certainly couldn't find himself getting onto one of those reds after the brown or the blue shot. And well, it's now Zhou Yuelong, a massive shot here to try and roll the cue ball in towards the reds. And I think Mark Allen probably will find himself winning a couple of those points if Zhou Yuelong misjudges the power. And I don't think he will in the end. So nicely done. Hopefully for Zhou though, he won't give away a free ball chance. And not a free ball. What am I talking about? Touch and ball there for Mark Allen. Free ball. It's not foul there. And Mark Allen certainly will have a touch and ball to his name and just roll the cue ball away there from the bunch. Try and land it in behind the green. Nicely done to an extent there. I don't think Zhou Yuelong can get through to the reds. Certainly not in the way that he'll need it to happen for him to play a successful safety shot. And just send the cue ball in towards the left-hand side of either one of those reds. And get it safely away and back to the top part of the table you would hope for if you Zhou Yuelong. In the end, he goes into the reds quite heavily. But once again, brilliant shot in terms of the cue ball control. You know, and a lovely kiss on the brown will probably help Zhou Yuelong here. As once again, he finds himself 64 points clear. Still 67 on the table. All reds available. And black and pink very much in and around their spots. 3 ball colours, still more than possible as well. So the clearance is on for Mark Allen, but he also is one successful safety away from him. Yuelong so far playing nicely in the second frame, apart from, of course, making that bizarre mistake on the black into the left corner and getting himself into all sorts of trouble here in terms of not getting the frame over the line. In the end, Allen managed to get himself a red on the board, but into the right corner, but didn't manage to land perfectly on the blue, and in the end decided to go for a snooker escape, and has a little bit of a chat to the crowd, something that you quite often see Mark Allen do, but with me watching with no audio, I can't quite tell you what the statement was, but probably was, can anyone give me an advice of how to actually get out of the safety shot that Yuelong has landed on him? We're about to see if he's found a way, or the crowd suggesting is actually going to be very, very important. And for now, you just double the red into the pink, into the green pocket there, and doesn't want it to go in, because unless now he finds himself on the black here, and the crowd are applauding, not too sure they can actually do the maths right, because he's 64 points down with only 59 on the table, and he finds himself with, well, unless he manages to get his black in, needing snookers, the only way to pot this black is going to be into the green pocket once again, with the cue ball being on the cushion. Pretty much an impossible shot for Mark Allen to try and execute, but we'll see, and he'll certainly not give this one up. Try to roll this one in and miss it by quite some margin. Certainly is going to be frame conceded, you would have thought. And just waiting there for the confirmation. He will be frame conceded, and he will be frame to Yuelong. So, 2 quick frames in succession, only 35 minutes or so in between those two. And now it is Mark Allen 1, Yuelong 1. Gets himself a very important frame on the board. Now Yuelong had to make sure he didn't find himself on the receiving end of a similar scenario that he actually managed to do to Mark Selby yesterday, winning 3 out of 3 opening frames there, and making a scoreline of 3 frames to nil, getting himself 50% into the final, and in the end managed to just trade frames there with Selby and still finish off with a 3 points advantage. Right now, that's not going to be the case here, with each of the players finding a decent break value. As I say, it still could have been a maximum for Yuelong. We're never going to find out, if he would have been in with a chance to split up the bunch and get himself onto the black after that red. But in the end, managed to miss the black into the left corner, leave himself short of the frame ball, give away a shot to Mark Allen that he didn't actually make the full usage of, and got himself into the safety battle, which ultimately had to be lost out, with Mark Allen not necessarily finding a shot there for his name, sending the red up the table, but unlucky to find himself seeing that red disappear into the green pocket. And right now, we are going to see the 3rd frame to get underway, as Mark Allen is the first player to return from a bathroom break. Yuelong will surely follow him and be on his way back to this chair. And 3rd frame is going to start very shortly. And yeah, perfect start, I would say. Don't really want to see any of the players get away, and I'm going to be very happy to see them, sort of trailing frames. And Yuelong, though, needs to make sure that was the last time you'll see Mark Allen away, at least for the foreseeable future. He needs a 3rd frame as well, because when Mark Allen is the comeback king, the last thing you want to do is actually give him a head start. It's one thing from coming back from being, 3 frames down or something, but it's a little bit different when you actually find yourself being down to the player that, has been so good in comebacks. Yes, for now, Yuelong will get the 3rd frame underway and start us off now with it being very quick match so far. As I say, very nice to see Mark Allen actually supporting the quick style of play from Yuelong, and you never quite know with Mark Allen. He possesses really 2 styles of play there to himself. Gets himself in and out of those chances, but in the end, It's always nice to see Mark Allen actually trying to take the game to his opponent and playing on the attacking side of things. For now, not a perfect safety shot there from Mark Allen. And once again, a potential red for Zhou Yuelong to try and put into the left corner had the black been available. But unless it actually goes into the right corner pocket, it isn't going to be available. At least for the time being, to any one of those two players. And, well, if he takes this red on, it's a massive risk in terms of the cue ball position to try and avoid those reds and get himself back up the table with the cue ball. Hopefully lined up for one of the bold colours or the blue. And a brilliant shot once again there from Zhou Yuelong. I mean, certainly taking the game to Mark Allen in his second frame. Now, trying to do the same sort of thing with, Mark Allen only having one shot there. All of a sudden, Zhou Yuelong is on a break. And it wasn't a bad safety shot either there from Mark Allen, but it wasn't good enough to try and stop Zhou Yuelong here. Lands himself on this blue into the right middle. And, well, let's see what's going to happen from the position that Zhou Yuelong will actually find himself in. The first blue is actually not the most straightforward of shots that Zhou Yuelong will actually find himself play. And gets a little kiss off the red. I think he would have liked to be a little bit luckier. I'm saying that with gritty teeth because I'm quite not too sure that he can actually get this red in and land himself on the black unless he goes for a very deep screw back, and that's not going to be easy. So trying to force his way through there and land the cue ball onto the pink into the right middle is not going to be easy either. So what do you find yourself? Probably taking the red onto the right corner, screwing back heavily into it though, trying to line up a black into the same pocket. With basically the situation he got in ahead of himself is he's got two reds. Either one of those he can actually try and pot, but the black to follow up will probably have to go in the same pocket. So he needs to either force a lot of topspin on this black or try and get himself screwing back there. Of course, alternative is to try and get onto the pink here, but he's gone for a screw back, and in the end he probably screws himself up a little bit. And with that shot selection, really, because it was never going to happen, I thought the logical shot for him to try and take one will be the red into the right corner, screw back heavily for the black into the same corner, because that way you avoid to have a cannon with the black that Zhou Yuelong couldn't avoid with the shot that he tried to play, and now finds himself out of position. And Lindsay finds himself with a shot to try and play into the left corner. Brilliant for Zhou. Not too sure. If you mean the lob pot, it was a brilliant shot, but now he finds himself in a difficult position. Only scoring 7 points on this break. And now the black will maybe go into the left corner, but once again, such an angle on the cue ball to go up the table and try and land onto one of those reds. But what a shot he just played there. Brilliant shot, and certainly the shot of the final so far. I mean, that was such a difficult black for him to try and play, and to position the cue ball perfectly into the red, to try and use it as a cushion and a stopper there, and the handbrake for the cue ball. Get himself perfectly on one of those reds into the right corner. And Zhou Yuelong gets himself 14 points clear now of Mark Allen once again with one more shot. So maybe that's what you meant. Brilliant from Zhou. And it was a brilliant clearance from him into the red ball. But still has got a long way to go if he is to get the third frame on his board. So far, the player that started off with the break has always gone on to win the frame in the opening two. As Zhou Yuelong will have a little touch of the black there, probably something that was difficult for him to avoid. And he'll be on this black though. Ultimately, that's the only thing that counts. Into the left corner. Try and line himself up for the red into the right middle. So that'll put him 22 points clear with 3 more reds available. And on the lower part of the table, one more onto the top part of it as well. So we're going to see if he actually will find himself on the next red. Certainly taking his time. And is he going to go into the bunch here? Not necessarily want him to do that for his own sake, but he's going to be alright here. He's judged the cannon really nicely. Got himself another red into the open play, and has ultimately landed on one of those reds into the right corner. So I'm doing everything that he has to get himself with an early lead, but Needs to take this red on though, and get himself nicely on the black, and what a miss. I mean, well, after doing all the hard work and actually getting himself some sort of freedom, he actually misses the red into the right corner and gives away a chance to Mark Allen in the third frame. So, the first time the scoreline doesn't look to be a win to nil. In the opening frames it has been, but not anymore, with Mark Allen certainly being on the break here. Doesn't land perfectly though on this blue. May have to consider taking the green in its own pocket and getting the cue ball in and around the table to line the red up onto the top part of it into the right middle. But that's going to be in a couple of moments to come. Well, now he's got a colour to try and choose from. Of course, Allen finds himself in not such a brilliant position as Zhou Yuelong would have found himself in had he continued the break and not miss a red into the corner, because he had that 22-point cushion to his name. Allen has got a 22-point deficit, but starts off with a really nice blue there to line himself with a somewhat difficult cut into the red, into the left corner. So Allen will try and send the cue ball in towards this area and get the cue ball up the table and onto the blue, well, hopefully for himself. But now starts off with concentrating on the pot, of course, and wants to land himself on the top part of the blue, but certainly with a lot of angle. And in the end, he'll just do that perfectly. So it wasn't easy at all. It was an easy positional shot on the previous occasion, but not this time around, as the red wasn't easy in itself, and getting on the blue was such a perfect angle wasn't easy, as I repeat myself. And for now, Allen will find himself running out of position slightly on the next red. Still can try and take it on into the right middle, but this time I don't think he'll have the ability to try and hold the cue ball onto the blue. So probably will have to use one of the bold colours onto the top part of the table. And still, 210 votes. Who will win session 1 for now? 54% go to Zhou Yuelong, only 8% for a draw, and 37% for Mark Allen. And Allen there finds a brilliant shot into the green pocket, so certainly didn't want him to land on one of the bold colours, and decided to sacrifice the potting angle and to go for a positional shot. In the end, executed brilliantly. Hopefully will go and get himself another red now after his black into the position cannon. Not quite there, so probably was the right shot for him to try and take on, but not quite the right execution here, as we are getting into the stage that probably going to see a little bit of a lengthy frame, with the way that two reds are set up on the top part of the table. Still a cluster of 4 reds being in each other's way, and 2 more being available. One more red that Zhou Yuelong has actually missed earlier, being on the right side cushion. So position is spread out well, but not necessarily in a perfect condition for either one of those two to try and go on a mesmerizing break. Mark Allen though needs to get himself, well, either safe on the cue ball or try and take another red into the green pocket. Not going to be easy from the position that he actually finds himself in. But let's take a look what he's got to offer. Probably will go for the green, for the red into the green pocket, try and land himself on the brown. Difficult shot this is, a lot more difficult than the one he managed to pot, but in the end it's a brilliant shot yet again from Mark Allen. He will indeed line himself either on brown or yellow, with the brown being an easier pot for himself, but yellow being more favourable in terms of the angle to try and get the cue ball down the table. I think he'll potentially try and hesitate on that and go for one more shot to try and clear the red that is currently on the top part of the table. Doesn't want to do that, so wants to try and accumulate as many points as possible and potentially get himself back in and around the black spot, as he finds himself ahead for the first time now in the third frame, leading by only a single point with a break of 23. And now has got a red into the right corner, but he's just checking to see if he's got one more red to try and go into the left corner, just underneath the pink. Would be a massive game changer for him if he actually does find a way to see the red and he actually lands on it, because the cue ball certainly will have traction and the angle to try and go and spread out the remaining 3 reds. And will certainly give a potential chance for, not necessarily the clearance there for Mark Allen, but it's not like he'll need it. I think, dispatching 6 of those 7 reds on the table will do him very, very nicely and certainly get himself over the line in the 3rd frame. But now something to focus on as he lines himself up with a pretty straight shot there on the black, so certainly being the plan you would have thought. And is he going to screw back, or is he going to try and force the cue ball up towards the table and into the bunch? No, he will screw back there with a lot of left-hand spin. Get himself very nicely on this red into the left corner. Now 9 points clear of Zhou Yuelong. And as I say, this red will free up the position nicely. For now, it will only be 1 more red there, with him actually trying to land on the wrong side of this red. But still needs to get it into the left corner first, and does. Once again, lands himself really nicely on the blue. So, not a lot I can say about Mark Allen struggling here earlier on. As I say, not necessarily anything that he can do in the 2nd frame. Was always going to be on the receiving end of it, with him actually finding himself 65 points behind. And had to go for an inventive shot. In the end, it didn't work out. But in the 1st and 3rd, the 2 chances that he's had so far, he's managed to take full advantage of, being certainly there in the opening frame, producing a break of 132 points, and being very much halfway there in frame number 3 as well. He has to grab an extension and reach for this red into the right corner, land himself on the black after it, and once again using the black ball cushion to his advantage, and a nice shot execution. So, we are entering the deciding phase of this frame number 3. Are we going to see Mark Allen going into the reds, or try and land himself on either one of those 2 available into the right corner pocket, or potentially left middle? Those 2 being spread out massively. But I think he will go into the bunch. And it's all about if he can actually line himself up for a shot into the right corner, right middle. And has he got one? We're about to find out. His reaction doesn't give it away straight away. And I think he can just about get through to that red. Try and screw back onto the black there to make sure he doesn't give anything easy away in terms of the red for Zhou Yuelong, should he find himself missing this red into the left middle. So a lot of screw back, and very nicely there. Very nicely done from Mark Allen yet again, as he's going to find himself with a second 50+ break in the opening 3 frames. If this black is going to disappear, and surely it will. Nice shot there, and a brilliant shot previously from Mark Allen to get himself safely set up for a clearance. And not a clearance. Why do I keep mentioning clearance there when he only needs 2 more reds? Safely get himself set up for a win in the 3rd frame, and getting himself 2 frames on the board, opposed to only 1 frame, 1 from Zhou Yuelong here. As 1 more ping disappears into the left corner, 38 points of a gap. So this red and the next blue will put in 44 points clear, with still 1 more red to try and potentially line up into either left middle or right corner pocket there for Mark Allen. Now he'll try and get this red in nicely, land himself on the blue into the left middle yet again. Something that we've seen him do quite a lot throughout this break. Now get himself 44 points clear, as the blue will disappear. Perfect positional shot once again on the red. So roll this one in, and he will be GG's in frame number 3 yet again here. And Mark Allen, that was known to be the comeback king so far, is putting a little bit of pressure on Zhou Yuelong in terms of getting early frames on the board and winning 2 of the opening 3 encounters here. And as I say, still being flawless in terms of his positional play. Just as I say that, he lands himself very awkwardly in this red, but ultimately not going to matter, as it's always going to be a very difficult ask for a century break. But now we'll try and roll this one into the yellow pocket, certainly not over yet. So that's 1 more chance that he's got ahead of himself. And the crowd are applauding, but that was a bit too short of notice, and it will be break of 72 points for Mark Allen to finish off the 3rd frame and get himself with a nice and early lead once again here of 2 frames to 1 against Zhou Yuelong, once again, early observation. Really nice to see both of the players trying to be aggressive, trying to be on the front foot, and producing some brilliant snooker already here in the opening 3 frames, as we're about to see the 4th one very shortly here. And remember, this match is going to be played of best of 17 there, so more than likely to see 8 frames in the opening session. And then, well, depends on how many we'll actually need there. Can go as far as 9 into the second session if we are going to see the maximum of 17 frames. But so far, nothing to separate the 2 players in the first 2 frames. But Mark Allen once again finds an edge in the 3rd one. And after Zhou Yuelong had an early chance, missed a positional shot and found himself in a difficult position on the red, gave away a chance to Mark Allen, and the pistol certainly took that one for granted and produced a break of 72 points to his name to add to the 132 points scored in the opening frame. So now, 4th frame is going to start shortly, and GG once again here in the 3rd frame. So the percentage for Mark Allen is still not going up necessarily, so Zhou Yuelong finds himself as a favourite of the session 1, but only by 53% to 39, but still only 8 of you are going for a score draw of 4 frames each. The referee will call time shortly there, and Mark Allen will be on a break shot there into the 4th frame. This is going to be a great match. Well, it already has been. In the opening frames, as I say, less than an hour. So averaging of, what is it going to be, like 15, 16, 17 minutes of a frame. Certainly good if you take into account it was an average frame duration of 40 in between Jackson Page and Mark Selby in the quarterfinal. And it probably was around 30 minutes of each of the semi-finals, with Mark Allen and Zhou Yuelong featuring in both of those. But in the end, it is going to start off with Mark Allen's break-off for frame number 4 and get himself, hopefully, over the line. And a 3-1 lead will be very handy there for Allen out of that 15-minute session interval. Once again, just try and set up the pace there, because there always is a fear that, even though Mark Allen's managed to come back 3 times in a row now against Ding Junhui, Elias Lesser, Jack Jones, you never want to see that comeback on the horizon for you again, because it might be just one match for too many for you to try and win. So an early lead for Allen will be very handy, and Zhou Yuelong, of course, needs to focus on getting himself through to the mid-session interval, with it being a score draw of 2 frames each. What do Lang Wenbo and Zhou Yuelong have in common? You're trying to get me into a little bit of trouble, but I suppose with the WPBSA releasing all the statement, I can say that both of those players have had some issues in terms of the history to match fixing. In the end, Zhou Yuelong was facing a lot more of a less significant ban than Lang Wenbo, that has seen Zhou Yuelong come back and, as he says, clear his name of any conspiracy and controversy. But certainly has been back on the tour for a couple of years after WPBSA, feeling that, the punishment of 1.5 years off the tour was good enough for him. As I say, he wasn't necessarily involved in match fixing himself. For now, though, he'll find himself 2-1 frames down here against Mark Allen. Red to try and go into the left corner for Mark Allen, potentially being the only long pot available to his name. But I think a more straightforward safety shot will follow up, with the cue ball being sent there in behind the yellow or brown. See the right-hand side of the table, and potentially give Zhou Yuelong a starter here. Well, let's see what he can actually come away with here, because he finds himself with a really difficult shot to try and play on the cue ball being sent towards the back of reds here. Once again, he'll have to be careful and cautious in terms of just how many of those that he'll try. Do you think this match has been fixed? if you're going to continue on the topic, it's probably going to be the last chat I'm going to read out from you because, as I say, his name has been cleared now, and he wasn't involved in match fixing himself, and I certainly don't think there's going to be any sort of match fixing involved here. There's a brilliant shot there from Yuelong, and what an answer that is. I mean, brilliant shot. Once again, could not have played that cue ball any better in behind the brown, and gets himself with a really handy shot advantage over Mark Allen. And certainly a couple of cushions now to follow up from Mark Allen if he wants to send this cue ball down the table. And, well, let's see which side is he actually going to trade on, with so many of those reds actually being available into both left and right corner. If Mark Allen will try and get himself very close to one of those reds, but wants to judge the power perfectly, as he's got a line in his mind that he'll try and attempt. 1, 2, 3, 4 cushions, potentially 5 there, and it's a good effort. Going to find himself short though, and is Zhou Yuelong actually going to try and take this red along the cushion and play it into the right corner? For now it is 4 points to Zhou Yuelong. And well, I mean, you can't really find yourself in a position that is going to be better than this. And it's all about if Zhou Yuelong actually takes this one on, or he feels like Mark Allen can try and give him away a couple of more points here. He will take this red on, so important to just try and roll through here. And potentially get himself on the black here. Nicely done once again here. So Zhou Yuelong certainly not being afraid to take those reds on. And being very happy with himself trying to. So far finds himself potting the hard ones, but actually meeting the reds that you actually expect him to try and score there with some sort of ease. In the end, does he get on the red here? I don't think he does, and it's a massive waste of a position that was looking like it was actually going to be favourable there for Zhou Yuelong. In the end, what can he do from this circumstance? He's got a red lined up potentially into the left corner. Because what has basically happened, he tried to play the cue ball into the bunch of reds to try and get some of those freed up, but has misjudged the cannon, and this cue ball has drifted off one of those reds into the left hand side, and finds himself in no man's land pretty much. And as he tries to take on this red into the left corner, so being only 12 points clear, doesn't want the same scenario as you've seen him come under in the third frame. For now, Mark Allen will find himself facing a safety shot of his own, as Zhou Yuelong probably takes the right decision there and just plays a cue ball into the safe position of the table. Quite far away there. And nicely done there by Mark Allen in terms of catching one of those reds very much on the thin there. Probably would have liked to have a little bit less power on the cue ball with it bouncing away from the ball cushion with some sort of traction. I mean, does Zhou Yuelong take this red into the right corner? He certainly can try and pot it, but what in terms of the positional side of things, I'm not too sure about it. And Zhou Yuelong will once again nicely send the cue ball in towards the ball colours here. And give a potential safety shot away to Mark Allen to try and play once again onto the right hand side of one of those reds. Try and get the cue ball into the safe area and get himself lined up for potential good watch in his chair. But for now, the cue ball will just bounce off the cushion yet again here, so not necessarily putting each other into any sort of issues. And Zhou Yuelong being 12 points clear of Mark Allen. Still finds himself with a lot of work to do before we go into the 15 minutes intermission break. And try to just drift off that red and just clip the edge of it. Send it into the back there. 2 cushion escape from the cue ball. And send it towards the ball carrier. He decides to go for another red there. But I am surprised with that shot selection. He was always going to leave the red that I actually suggested for him to try and play into the left corner. and sending it into the back there. He actually left it on here for Mark Allen, but with the red he's just played, putting the black out of the open play currently, the pink I'm not necessarily too sure will go into the right middle anyway. So we're going to see now if Mark Allen will try and go for the red into the left corner, trying to screw the cue ball back towards the blue or the ball colours. In the end he won't, but this time he'll produce a brilliant shot from the positional play on the cue ball and land himself very close to the cushion there. So Yuelong hasn't got a lot ahead of himself. Try push one of those reds into the back yet again to develop the pink potentially for one of those two, should they get on the break chance themselves. But for now, going against that, so Yuelong certainly going for the safe side of things. I would have expected him to try and develop the position more than Mark Allen. But so far, they probably find himself even on the safety side of things. Mark Allen for now will try and take the red into the left corner there. Not too sure that it is going to be the right shot for him to try, as once again goes back up and goes down for a different shot. Probably once again, as I say, the right decision. Probably will try to make usage of this plant in the right corner. Once again, get the cue ball very, very safe and in behind the brown, with the trajectory being good, but in the end a bit short of pace there. And has he left the shot on for Yuelong? Certainly has in the left corner. How about the right corner? As I say, if he can get through onto the black into the left corner from this red, it'll be a brilliant opener there for him. When is the evening session? It's going to be in 5 hours time from now, 7 o'clock local time in England, and local time in the UK. So 5 hours from now, if you're not from the UK. And a brilliant long shot there from Yuelong. Surely deserves a little bit of luck to get himself on the blue. In the end, will just about do that. But the blue is not going to be the standard shot for him to try and play into the middle. He's going to have to take this one on into the green pocket. The reds are there available for him. So once again, a brilliant and a massive shot right now to face after a fantastic red into the left corner. Needs to make sure the blue will follow up the red. And this is the shots that will dictate the run of play for Yuelong. And it's the first one that he actually will make. So brilliant there from Yuelong yet again. But now he finds himself still under a little bit of scrutiny. A lot of those reds are available, but with the pink being out of the game, black pretty much joining it as well, at least for the time being. Your running around has to be done in and around the blue here, unless you want to go for the top part of the table and sacrifice even more points, with the positional side of things not being easy for you as well. So got £30 on Zhou to win the match. I like my odds, pace 80. Yeah, logical, probably. As I say, I would actually tell you that Yuelong is the favourite for this match, but that was before the brilliant start for Mark Allen. And I still think it's an absolute 50-50 if it's going to be a scoreline of 2 frames to 2. So I suppose 30 pace 80 is not necessarily the worst outcome for you. But that will massively depend on the start, of course. If Yuelong is actually going to win this frame and take it to an intermission, with it being 2 frames each. So just play through this blue now. Try and get himself onto one more red, and needs to try and get black freed up as soon as he possibly can. Potentially has got an angle on one of those reds to go into the black and try and get in behind it, but you know, if he misses the shot or he gets unlucky with it, he's going to find himself with absolutely nothing to try and play for. Not necessarily sure you want to be taking this risk in such a massive frame in the final. Only being 24 points clear, with still 123 on the table. Once again, massive shot for him to try and take on. And, well, as I say, I don't think it was the right shot for him to play, because you can see he's landed nowhere near having the position on the black. And impatience from Yuelong could be very costly, as Mark Allen all of a sudden has got a straightforward ending to this frame, potentially, as I say. The black being developed by Yuelong on this shot, but ultimately saw himself ran out of the game. And Mark Allen will roll the red into the left corner. In fact, he won't roll it in. He'll try to hammer it in. And the cue ball has gone all the way and past the baulk line. He's actually managed to pass the D line as well. So, I mean, I don't really see Mark Allen taking this brown on into the right middle, but I'm not too sure why he had to play that red with so much power. Yeah, obviously trying to line himself up for either blue or the ball colours, but in the end, overscrewed massively. And could Yuelong get away with this one? He certainly won't get away without a snooker, with Mark Allen still having a potential chance to roll the cue ball in behind the brown. Let's see if he's going to try and do that. Or take the brown into the middle. I think he will take this brown into the middle though. He needs to make it first. And he will make it just about. But the brown will drop in. And does he find himself on the next red? Once again, it looks like he has. So, decent start off now for Mark Allen. Wasn't the most straightforward of the two shots he had to play an opener. And once again, sends the red into the right corner. And, well, I said it was going to be a massive frame, with Mark Allen now getting himself a perfect position on this black and finally putting it back to where it belongs on his spot there. In terms of the reds he's got available, he's got two more for sure after this black, but the majority of those reds are spread out quite nicely in and around the positional spot of the pink. So if you go into one of those, surely you're going to try and end up on either or. With the 6 reds still in that pack. 2 more in the open play, as I mentioned. And 2 more being quite close to the cushions. One on the right-hand side of the table. One on the black ball cushion. So, change of mind there from Allen. As you'll take the red into the left corner. Potentially can try and go into the position. And the cluster of reds. In the end doesn't want to do that. And will line himself up for a blue into the left middle. So as I say, 1 more red available for him until he has to go into the bunch of reds here. It doesn't necessarily line up perfectly on this red, but he's alright. And he'll be able to recover once again for the blue. But it being probably the easier shot for you to try and counter the cue ball into the other reds. For now, he needs to make sure he gets this perfect in terms of the positional side of the cue ball. Lands on top of blue. And does he do that? I don't think he does. I think you'll probably have to use a cushion to go into the bunch of reds, unless he actually has got one more that, you know, the he spotted that camera didn't necessarily give me the best angle for. But for now, he's looking to find himself 1 point ahead now of Yuelong, producing a break of 25 points. Still 91 on the table. He is certainly playing for 1 more red, but is he going to get on it? Not too sure. You have to play this one perfect with very little room there. Very little margin for error. And with the approach and the walk he's taking around the table, I think it's all about which safety am I going to have to play on now. So, 25 points for Mark Allen to just edge the gap there on Yuelong, producing a break of 24 points earlier on. And looks like we will see a part 3 of this 4th frame. So Mark Allen will just try the red into the pack there probably. And potentially has got a chance to send the cue ball up the table. Depends if he wants to do that or not. In the end, he will develop the red just enough there to push one of those into the open area, with one more going quite close to the black ball cushion for good measure there. So Yuelong here will have more of a straightforward chance to send the cue ball up the table, in behind any of the ball colours. He just has to make sure the red heat just taken out of the cushion won't land for an available spot for Mark Allen, which he won't. So only 1 red for Allen to try and take on into the left corner, but with the cue ball going straight into the reds, very much doubt that he's going to try and consider taking that shot on. And for now, just roll into the pack of reds onto the lower cushion, and you probably will be happy with that. As long as there's no weight on that cue ball, and he judges the power perfectly, which pretty much did there. I think he's left a red for Zhou Yuelong to try and consider into the right middle. But I think it might be too difficult of a shot for him to take on. I mean, the cue ball will be going somewhat safe. But with Zhou Yuelong not even looking at that red, probably go for an option and a plan B there for him. And as I say, it's a massive frame already. He certainly has been the longest of them all. With that one just making sure that the average frame time is not going to be under 20 minutes. With 4 of those being played on just under 90 minutes for now. And Zhou Yuelong tried to develop those 2 reds, but in the end, looks like he's done his work. And he's left it a little bit short there on the cue ball. Certainly will give away a red for Mark Allen to try and take on into the left corner. It's all about trying to squeeze that red in and getting himself nicely on the black into the left corner pocket. And what are we going to see from here? 25 points for Mark Allen. Only 1 point ahead of Zhou Yuelong here. And is he going to try and get himself on the black here? Or is he going to try and play away there from the main colours and get himself potentially on one of the ball colours? Whatever it was, he certainly played a brilliant red. And is he going to be rewarded for it? Probably just about fine on this brown into the green pocket. Would have liked to have a bit more luck though, as it's not an easy brown, and the cue ball will have so much of an angle to go down the table that it's going to be difficult for Mark Allen to try and pick out any of those reds. Needs to get the brown in first. Just about managed to do that. Squeezes that in. And well, what a turnaround this could be in 4th frame. Zhou Yuelong found himself on the opening break of this 4th frame, but in the end, Mark Allen has got a second chance now. The first one seemed edge out that gap by a single point in his favour, and this one surely will see him go for the kill in the 4th frame and get himself an early lead of Zhou Yuelong here. For now, it is the ping to go into the right corner. One more red available for him into the right corner until the cue ball will surely be sent into the pack of 3 reds. And as I say, not necessarily seeing any of the reds on the cushion here, so in terms of getting this position over the line for Mark Allen, it's not necessarily looking too bad for him. And this cue ball will line up on the red nicely, so just get as close to the red as is possible to make sure you can still see enough of that to power the cue ball into those reds, hopefully get himself on the pink after it. Important shot once again now for Mark Allen. And so far he's been flawless with those throughout the entire tournament. Gets a little bit of luck, you would have thought, if he lands himself on the blue. But probably just short there. And let's see what he's going to try to take on. Has a look at the pink there into the left corner. In the end, we'll probably go for the blue into the left middle. So can just about get through that red and lands the blue in nicely. Has the cue ball position, needs the cue ball to run here, and is running off there for Allen to be nicely onto the red into the right middle. So now being ahead by 19 points already, and with only 67 on the table, surely not too long for him to try and put reds and colours until you actually find himself with a gap of 3 frames to 1. For now, once again, has to roll the cue ball in towards the blue. Doesn't find the perfect positional shot, but probably was never on the cards for him anyway. But still, pink being compromised awkwardly by one of the reds on the left-hand side of it. And send the cue ball into the reds nicely. Screw back into potentially one of those into the right middle, if he doesn't want to take the gamble onto either going into the cluster of 2 reds or a cluster of pink and red there, just underneath the pink spot. And in the end, he will line himself up a really nice shot into the right middle. And if that red will go through into the right corner, the remaining one, that's going to put Allen with a perfect position to try and get into either one of those 2 remaining ones onto the black cushion. For now, he rolls the red in nicely into the right middle, pretty much with no weight left on it. So has to take the pink now and potentially try and cover up its spot now. Depends on what his plan is actually going to be. And he managed to screw back enough there to actually land himself on the red into the same corner pocket. As we've got 300 people watching, thank you very much for everyone joining in. Feel free to leave the like on the stream and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And reminder, when we get through the English Open final, we will be back to the action tomorrow with the British Open there starting off. Judd Trump is going to be facing Aaron Hill in the first round. And for now, we have to get the best out of action on here on table number 1 in Brentwood. As Mark Cullen will roll this pink in nicely, line himself on one of those reds into the corner, which of course will be a frame ball and a red that will take it away from Zhou Yuelong for the second time already in this opening 4 frames and make it a scoreline of 3 frames Mark Cullen, only 1 for Zhou Yuelong. So still very much on the projector, on the projected scoreline of 9-4, which was the scoreline between Mark Cullen and Zhou Yuelong at the last time, and the only time those two met in a ranking event final, with Alan ultimately winning his home tournament in Northern Ireland in 2022. And once again, after a little hesitation there, gets the red into the corner and surely will get himself one more frame on the line now. So just blue to roll into the right middle to make sure that he's going to be safe from any sort of threat there from Zhou Yuelong, and in the end he will do that. And a nice little break here of 44 points looks to be enough for Mark Cullen for us not to see any more of Zhou Yuelong in the opening mini session here. And now we're going to see a potential total clearance. We will probably if Mark Cullen gets this red into the right corner. In the end he won't. So are we going to see Zhou Yuelong come back to the table? And we will. Surprised to see that, to be honest, with him needing 3 snookers or a potential snooker and a free ball. But let's see. And so I suppose you have to do that in the final, but needs to start off nicely though, and doesn't want to leave a gap there for Mark Cullen to try and see that red. Potentially roll this one in into the yellow pocket. We'll see now. Of course, Alan found himself on the receiving end of players finding snooker ahead of him. And against him, I should say, for quite a few times already in this tournament campaign. But this time he plays a smart shot there, probably forcing Zhou Yuelong to roll this red into the yellow pocket and try and find snookers on the 6 colours that all of them are actually looking perfectly on their spots. But Zhou Yuelong has got a decision to make ahead of him. Of course, if he is to roll this red in, needs to make sure he has a high value colour with it, but he's gone for a shot to try and keep the red out. And is he going to land the cue ball in behind the blue here? It's a massive shot for him to try and do that. Well, actually looking to play away from the cushion and giving Zhou a little tap on the table to acknowledge the good safety shot he just managed to play. It was a good shot there from Zhou Yuelong, but ultimately he needs to find himself much more on the front foot and much more attacking and much more clinical. 2 errors that he's made in frames number 1 and 3. Looking to make it very, very costly of a mistake here in frame number 4 as well, as he finds himself once again on the receiving side of things. But this time it's a brilliant shot there from Zhou Yuelong. And just how awkward is it actually going to be for Mark Cullen to try and swerve around this yellow? And can he try and catch the right hand side of the table? Send the cue ball into the red nicely. Yes, he can is the answer. Catch it full ball as well for good measure. And once again, Zhou Yuelong has got it all to do again. 4th frame is not quite over yet, with it being quite quick, I would say. Opening 4 frames, you know, being well under a 90-minute mark so far. If this one is to finish in the next 5 minutes or so. With both of the semi-finals taking their opening 4 frames to around 100 to 120 minutes. So we're already ahead of that schedule. And Zhou Yuelong still looking to hang on here in the 4th frame. Just about doing that so far, but having a little free shot now ahead of himself. Try and get the cue ball in behind the black and just looking to force Mark Cullen to play a difficult snooker escape, but has to generate a lot of distance there in between the red and the cushion. Does that. Mark Allen acknowledges the shot that he's just played, but ultimately you will probably still expect Mark Allen to run the red in behind the blue there. So it's a nice shot there from Allen, but ultimately the one that you would expect Mark Allen to find himself on the receiving end of the shot once again here. So if Zhou Yuelong just manages to tap the red ever so slightly, get the cue ball in behind the brown or green, and certainly there will be a lot of distance in between the red and the cushion for the cue balls to try and land on the red. And TNT broadcast once again reminding us that Zhou Yuelong is 45 points behind, with only 35 of those available for the taking there on the current table. As certainly there wasn't a chance for him to try and play as little of a contact into the red, but still managed to get the green in between the cue ball and the red, but not doing enough of that, and Mark Allen can comfortably see enough of the red to actually play a decent safety shot. Just avoids the double kiss there, and gets a nice position on the cue ball in towards the black spot area. So once again, the fourth frame is not over yet, and it probably has been the only one that you could consider lengthy. The first three has almost finished up in a space of less than an hour there. With the fourth one, I should say, taking pretty much more than half an hour right now. And Zhou Yuelong once again will see that red disappear down the table, as he wants to have those ball colours in between the cue ball and the red. Decent attempt there, as long as he's covered up the ball line escape for Mark Allen, but doesn't look like he actually managed to do that. And two cushion escape, or potentially one cushion escape, should see Mark Allen comfortably away of the position that he finds himself in. And he actually is going to fluke the red and surely get the session over and done with here. The mini session, of course, it is going to be Mark Allen with a lead of 3 frames to 1, as we are going to be heading into a 15-minute intermission break. Zhou Yuelong 1 and Mark Allen 3 here. Zhou Yuelong found himself losing the opening frame, managed to level up the scoring board with taking the second frame, making it 1 frame each. But third and fourth frame has gone the way of Mark Allen, and it's the pistol that is going to be leading Zhou Yuelong ahead of the second mini session. And we've got a match on our hands, that's for sure, but Mark Allen is certainly not in no mood to try and find himself facing another comeback, with him being producing a brilliant game so far and getting Zhou Yuelong in behind with a deficit of 2 frames. Mark Allen 3, Zhou Yuelong 1, and we'll be back with you for more action after this 15 minutes intermission will end. Stick around and feel free to hit the like on this stream and subscribe to the channel in the meantime. We'll be back with you soon. Well, the intermission is over now, and welcome back everybody for the mini session number 2 here at the final of English Open. As the 5th frame is about to start here, and it will be started off by Zhou Yuelong here, who finds himself being 3 frames down to 1 there, and a massive task ahead of him already, and of course hoping that it's not going to become impossible task with, as I say, I think if Alan manages to take a couple of more of those frames with Joe still sitting on the scoreline of a single frame there, one to his name, I think he will become mission impossible, and he'll probably have to get Tom Cruise instead of him in the session number 2 here. But for now, it's still mission doable, and he can still try and get on top of Mark Allen, as plenty of players have done that. And you know, one thing I will say, when you lose 4 frames in a row to Elias Lesser and 3 frames in a row to Jack Jones and Ding Junhui, it means that you can actually lose frames. It also means, of course, that even though you couple sometimes 3, sometimes 4 frames down, you manage to come back and win the encounter. But for now, Mark Allen finds himself in a difficult safety shot to try and play from. And has he played this one to perfection? He probably has, because he was risking to skid off that red and send the cue ball onto the top part of the bunch. Instead, he will be safe there. I don't think Zhou Yuelong can get through to that red into the left middle, so he should be safe and through there. And Zhou Yuelong would probably just play away there, as the referee has called touch and bow in the process. So use the left hand side cushion to his advantage, and probably a 3 or maybe 2 cushion escape onto the ball cushion, to leave Mark Allen snookered on the red. That is the only one in open play yet, and it's actually a really nice safety shot there, played by Zhou Yuelong. If Allen can't actually get through to that red, I don't think he can see enough of it to try and pot it, but he can certainly try and see enough of that red to try and go for a safety shot. But in the end, it's a brilliant shot there from Mark Allen, as he actually could see enough of that red to try and pot it into the left corner. And once again, it's a perfect start here for Mark Allen, as he lands himself probably too perfect there on the black. Doesn't want to be straight on it, and looks like he actually finds himself straight on his black into the right corner. So very unfortunate, but I mean, what a game plan and what a performance so far from Mark Allen. As I say, didn't have any other chance but to lose the frame in the second one. But apart from that, it's been a flawless performance. And once again, coming back after the 15 minutes interval with a bang there. Straight away a brilliant long shot, but looks like it's only going to earn him 8 points potentially if he takes this black on. But maybe not even going to bother with that, and send the cue ball up the table right now. Depends on what he finds in terms of safe play. I think he can try and line himself up for a shot into the left middle. That's going to be an absolute dead man walking, and impossible for him to get any of those reds into the left corner. But he's tried to do that, and as he landed on one of those reds into the left corner, will be a massive game changer, as I mentioned, for the second frame. Of course, Zhou Yuelong not taking his time in the third one. And Mark Allen has been on the break and on the streak there ever since that second frame, winning 2 frames on the bounce now, and once again getting himself an early break of 8 points. That doesn't seem to end just yet. One more, as I say, available for Mark Allen into the left corner. Try and take that one away. Land himself on the blue there. And potentially go into the reds from that blue. It'll be entirely to Mark Allen there for the side. But once again, plays a nice little red there into the corner. In the end, did manage to get through to that one without any further issues. But this is the important shot right now, because I don't think he's got any more reds available to his name. So has to power the cue ball into the blue. Make sure he gets the pot in first and try and land himself onto one of those reds. But in the end, he gets very unlucky as he pots one of those reds alongside the blue. In the end, it's going to be 5 points advantage to Zhou Yuelong from that particular shot. And the cup of tea or coffee that Allen has actually brought with himself after the interval is going to be very handy, because that's a massive shot of misfortune there from him. Let's see how Alan will feel as a front runner for once. Well, not so good right now, as he finds himself ending the break of only 9 points, gives 5 of those away. And Zhou Yuelong will now have got... I mean, I would say he's got a nice little position ahead of him, but not necessarily from the start here. He's got a difficult shot from the rest to try and take on into the right corner. Certainly unlucky there from Alan. But now, Zhou Yuelong has to do something that he hasn't managed to do in the opening. Well, 4 frames, only managed to do that on one of those occasions. And actually get himself over the line there. And hopefully, of course, for him, from the first time of doing that, still even the break of 65 points in the second frame hasn't actually got him over the line in that particular battle yet. Had to fight back the safety approach from Alan, but ultimately did manage to get over the line in that particular battle. But right now, he's got a really nice position ahead of him. And that is Zhou within his grasp, but has he landed himself out of position once again? He has straight away taken an easy black off the spot. Can he get through to this red? I mean, certainly says to the camera that he's very, very close there, and he's not necessarily confident on taking this red on. And as I always say, the more the player hesitates and the more he looks away from it, the more grimaces potentially he puts away there, the less likely it's going to be for him to take this red into the right corner. And, well, it would be a massive waste because he hasn't got any other red lined up ahead of him. So obviously putting all of his eggs in the basket of trying to land perfectly on this red into the right corner. In the end, not managing to do that. And is that going to be just a safety play? Or is he going to try and take the more difficult red that I don't even think he has to consider here? The cue ball is going to be going into the reds from here. And it's not going to be easy to see Zhou Yuelong land on a colour from this, but looks like he is going to try and do that. Probably will get the red in. No, you won't. Wow. So, in the end, he has actually landed the cue ball on the pink into the right corner, but ultimately missing a red into the right corner. And it's all going and falling apart here for Zhou Yuelong. Not taking the advantage of the misfortune there from Mark Cullen. It wasn't even a mistake there from him. He played the cannon into the reds perfectly. Very unlucky to see the red disappear into the corner pocket there. But right now, Mark Allen is going to be on the verge of once again returning to the table as the dominant force, as he rolls the red into the left middle very, very nicely yet again. Lands himself in a brilliant position for the black here. And, well, I mean, the position is perfect. You've got 3 reds basically over the corner pockets. You know, 2 of them over the corner pockets, 1 more over the right middle. And you've got the majority of those still being very much open for Alan to try and take advantage of. He could have been in the position of Zhou Yuelong. In the end, it doesn't look like that's going to be the case here. As Alan, a 4-1 lead. I mean, that is a massive task for Zhou Yuelong to put ahead of himself. Especially with Alan actually being the player that usually comes back later in the match, but he's going to find himself with a very difficult job to try and do in the evening session. If the tendency of Mark Allen dominating the morning or / the afternoon one will continue. For now, the blue to go back on his spot after the shot into the left middle. Once again, lands Allen nicely on the shot into the right corner, right middle. Spoiled for choice right now. Probably will take the red closer to the black there to be in and around the black spot and make usage of 3 more reds to himself. As Zhou Yuelong in the background, you can see he certainly can be getting very comfortable in his chair, because I would certainly give you a prediction that he won't be coming back to the table unless a miracle will happen for him. And miracles do happen, but not necessarily in the opening session of the 2025-2026 English Open campaign. Mark Allen seems to be the man on the charge and the man on the mission. Still yet to make the first real error from my point of view. I'm still not necessarily going to count the blue and the red job as an error. Still think it was a marginal side of snooker that you necessarily can't say the player can predict. But I suppose that's part of the game and something that you have to deal with and move on. Certainly something that Mark Allen is looking to try and do to get himself 4-1 clear of Zhou Yuelong here. Very close to doing that in the current frame, of course, with the reds being spread out the way they are. It basically is 4 reds available to Mark Allen and 3 more being quite close to either right side cushion, left side cushion, or the black ball area. But the 4 reds that were available now, with one of them disappearing into the right corner, it's going to be only 3 of those available. Surely that will be enough for Mark Allen, as he was just doing the check of the points. And as long as he does and puts those reds with the black here, he certainly will be away in this 5th frame. Get himself on the score sheet and change the number next to the frames 1 from 3 to 4 here. Still 6 shots to try and play until then to get himself over the line of a frame ball. 34 points clear right now. As I say, the elimination of those 3 reds will put him comfortably ahead of 51 points that are going to be available for Zhou Yuelong to try and take on. So probably any professional player should make this position work for them, and especially with being the world number 10 that has got 11 ranking titles on his name. As I mentioned, 3 of those coming on Triple Crown events. Of course, the former winner of the UK Championship for good measure. And once again rolls the black in nicely into the left corner. So had to maximize the points tally there for himself. 42 points clear now. Those 2 reds will put that 44. So 2 semi-expensive colours will certainly get him over the line. And the blue being one of those. A break of 47 points right now. Once again, another break of 50 plus for Mark Allen on his way. After producing a brilliant clearance in the opening frame to get himself a century of 132 points on the board. Once again, he's comfortably away in terms of points on, 3 of those occasions, and about to make that 4 with the 2 more shots for him to be over the line of a frame ball. As now the gap in between the 2 players is 51 points. 50 points, I should say, with the blue disappearing now. Win that night. 54 here with only 51 on the table. So certainly looking very good now for Mark Allen, as he would have liked to avoid the kiss on the black here. So 54 points in between the 2 players, still 51 on the table. So 1 snooker now required for Zhou Yuelong, as Allen can try and force this red into the corner. I think we'll have to settle for the frame to last a little bit longer, unless this red will actually disappear, and it will. So it's a brilliant shot there from Allen, and it's certainly the one that will take him over the line here. I can't really see now. I can't really expect to see Zhou Yuelong back in this 5th frame, and once again just has to regroup himself and go back in the 6th one, because the points and the frames that Mark Allen has been winning are mounting for Mark Allen and against Zhou Yuelong. Surely just roll up to the green here from Mark Allen. No need to invent anything more than that. So in the end, actually tries to put it onto the left side cushion. So are we going to see more of Zhou Yuelong? Don't think we will, because he will be frame conceded and frame Mark Allen here. So all of a sudden, he finds himself brilliantly winning 3 frames on the bounce. Ever since that 2nd frame, decent break of Zhou Yuelong of 65 points. It has been Mark Allen pretty much dominating the play, and now puts himself as a guaranteed player not to lose in the opening session. Of course, still, if Zhou Yuelong was to come back and win 3 frames in a row himself, something that is looking to be very unlikely with the way the first 5 have gone. But still, we've seen stranger things have happened on the snooker table here. With a reminder that the Saudi Arabian Masters has seen a massive gap of 7-2 to Neil Robertson, being overcome by Ronnie O'Sullivan. Of course, you can't really compare Neil Robertson and Ronnie O'Sullivan to Mark Allen and Zhou Yuelong there, but I'm just saying, that's happened before, and it can always happen again here. So the referee will try and do his part and set up the reds on the colours as quickly as it possibly can, with the people making their way out. So far the crowd not necessarily getting in the way of players, and ever since the opening frame we haven't seen any interjection or interference from the crowd. And right now the colours are set up, the reds are certainly set up, and the referee will just wait a couple of more moments until he will ask, I think it will be Mark Allen's turn, to break off in frame number 6, with him doing the even ones and Yuelong taking the odd frames out. But as I say, Yuelong now is finding himself in the situation and a position where he has to perform, and he has to, take his game to a new level. There's no two ways about it. He's not been good enough from him, and it certainly has been good enough for Mark Allen still to make a real mistake from me. As I say, in the opening 5 frames, sublime, perfect, fantastic, marvellous are some of the adjectives that I would actually use to describe Mark Allen's performance. And clinical would be the one to sum it all up here. Yuelong, not good enough. 3 words that you can try and describe his performance with. I'm not going to say he's been wasteful, but you could try and say that. But he's just not been good enough. And when you're up against Mark Allen that is playing really, really well, he's going to be a massive mission for Yuelong to try and go on to win at least 2 of those frames now. He can't be going into the evening session with a scoreline of 6-2 down for his name. He still has to take at least 2 of those frames away from Mark Allen and make it all to play for in the evening session. For now, Mark Allen will actually get this frame on the start here. And we're now up and running in frame number 6. Still very quick pace to this opening session final so far. We're only down to 2 hours since the match has actually started, and that includes all the breaks in between the frames and the 15 minutes interval as well. So certainly below the 30 minutes mark of an average frame time, and something that is actually really refreshing to see after seeing both of the semi-finals actually take a long time yesterday. The fact that we're now actually seeing players perform to their absolute best and play the aggressive style of snooker is very, very nice to see. For now, though, it's a good safety shot there that Yuelong has played and puts Mark Allen into a little bit of a danger spot and a little bit of a spot of bother. We'll try and play around this shot, though. Get himself safe in behind the red. I think he'll try and use the right-hand side of the table to roll up to either one of those. And yet again find himself in control of the frame. So, of course, we've seen a similar shot approach in the previous frame from Mark Allen. That one, he's managed to escape from that snooker wonderfully, not leave anything away to Yuelong. And you can see there the actual table time and the match time without the interference, the breaks in between them, and the intermission is only reached 90 minutes here. So let's see. Allen makes it look too easy so far. It certainly is, and he's not challenged enough by his opponent. Something that we need to see. The change of play now from Yuelong. He still has an hour and a half or so in this encounter to be up against the world number 10 and take at least 2 of those frames away from him. As I say, if he's going into the evening session with the scoreline of 6 frames to 2, it probably is game over without it actually starting in second session. And Allen there, whether it was intended or not, he tried to find the red into the right corner. In the end, we'll give this one away to Yuelong. So once again, pretty much in every single one of the frames that Allen has won, he's given a chance to Yuelong on the start of the frame, but with the Chinese player not taking those chances, he was the man from Northern Ireland that actually managed to see all of his chances count for his name, as Yuelong will just roll this red into the corner, land himself with a nice shot on the black here. So certainly the crowd will be getting behind Yuelong now, as they don't want to see very much a one-way final. It's the last thing you want to see, especially if you paid for the afternoon and the evening session tickets. You want to see as much of the action as possible, and ultimately, don't think too many players here or too many fans here would actually book the ticket to see Mark Allen or Yuelong play. But certainly so far it's been a perfect show for the fans, and it has been Mark Allen's show. Can Zhou Yuelong try and turn it around and make it a Zhou Yuelong show, at least for the next couple of frames? You never know, he can still make it a 4-all scoreline. I think it's going to be very difficult with my prediction of him going into the evening session ahead already being out of the equation. Getting that one wrong yet again. As 400 people have actually voted for who's going to win session 1. 48% of you have actually gone for Zhou Yuelong. 44% have gone for Mark Allen. Only 8% have gone for the draw here. So, I mean, certainly not looking like it actually is going to be Zhou Yuelong's session to lose here or to win. Because so far it is Mark Allen with all the domination in the world in the opening 5 frames. Managing to win 4 of those. And 3 of them coming on the bounce. Zhou Yuelong, although, we'll still say a couple of more words here until we're going to get for a break in between the players that I expect to be in around 2, maybe 3 hours. Depends on how quickly we get through the remaining 3 frames here. Potentially make now 4 if we're going to be really rapid with sometimes. It depends on the way the session goes. The referee and the organisers can actually ask the players to play 9 frames in the opening session to just make it even in terms of the load on the players to play 8 frames in the opening session and 9 in the evening one, if it's going to be all 17 frames played. And for now, as the referee settles the debate between the pink and the reds, with the pink going underneath the reds there. Couldn't find its own spot, and with all the other colours being on their spots really nicely and sitting on those, had to go underneath the bunch, something that I think could still be very important for Zhou Yuelong should he go into the reds very, very soon, with him running out of the ones that are actually available to his name. And actually not landing perfect on this black right now, into the left corner. And Zhou Yuelong will have to see which red to actually go for. As I say, he's got one more, which was going to be easy, into either left or right corner, and he actually landed perfectly on this black, but now he's considering to go for a red into the left middle. So this is the one that is going to be a lot more complicated for Zhou Yuelong to try and take on, and certainly doesn't want to miss this one, as it has been a very attacking play, so he's certainly not going to see Zhou Yuelong backing off from this shot. He will try and take it on. He certainly will try and land himself on the blue there. But it's not an easy one with him actually landing pretty straight on this shot. I think it's going to be a challenge. And once again, any shot that actually Zhou Yuelong misses could be a massive turning point yet again in this frame. And well, I couldn't quite figure out what he was looking at. And he obviously was looking to see if the red was going past all the other reds. In the end, can't quite see what he's saying there to the referee. Let me just figure this one out for me. So he's trying to see if something has moved there on the table. And don't think Allen will complain too much about that. And yeah, in the end, no conclusion. And just in delaying the game, I think Allen will have a look for himself. Still not too sure what they're actually looking at. So in the end, of course, it will be Mark Allen that steps to the table and tries to take it away from Zhou Yuelong here. Not for the first time, certainly. There's a little bit of a delay. Won't necessarily go in his favour. But ultimately, once again, Mark Allen is going to find himself with a chance to make a significant break of, I don't know, around 60, 70 points if he is to win this frame in the current visit to the table. For now, he needs to focus on sending the cue ball into the reds. Will just skid off one of those, and ultimately will still land himself just about on the red into the left corner. So, certainly was feeling like he was there for the taking, trying to send the cue ball into the reds from the blue there. And had he caught those more in the face there, and not just skid off the left-hand side of some of those reds, I think he would have been in with a chance there. But for now, he's got 2, maybe 3 reds to deal with, as that cannon has given him some sort of benefit. But for now, he's got a semi-difficult shot now with the rest into the left corner. The cut not necessarily being the kindest to him. And therefore sending the cue ball, run the mileage and land on yellow or brown here into the yellow pocket. But I think he'll go for the brown simply for the fact of he doesn't want the angle on the yellow unless he actually wants to go into the back here. I think if you go for the red available to him, he has to go for the brown and screw back. But he clearly wants to go into the back here. So goes for the yellow in his own pocket. Is he going to play this one with power? Or is he going to try and have the left-hand side cushion to actually get himself on the red available? And yet again, makes this one look ever so easy there, Alan. Gets himself very straight on this red though. So would have liked to see an angle to go back for the blue here. And, well, a decision now once again for him to make. Is he going to be playing through for the black there, which is currently sitting very close to the right corner pocket? Or is he going to screw back heavily into the cue ball and try and send it up the table yet again for him to line up a shot into the middle with the blue? Get himself a nice little angle on the reds, but has actually overscrewed this one. So brilliant in terms of the cue action, but actually, as I say, doing a little bit too much there. And, well, either finds himself with a really difficult cut off the blue into the left middle, or a black to go into the right corner and try and send the cue ball for a little bit of a hit and hope shot into the reds. Once again, it's a massive frame for him to try and do that. I think he'll go for the brown into the yellow pocket, so a difficult angle. But certainly, the colour there, you can try and force the cue ball to travel a long distance here. And try and get yourself on the red into the right corner. So once again, Alan playing this one perfectly. I mean, you couldn't have asked for any better in terms of the positional shot on this red. Once again, has got a little bit of an angle to try and force the cue ball up the table and land himself nicely for the blue. So that will be one extra bonus there for Mark Allen if he finally gets himself nicely on this blue, but he won't. In fact, he'll probably land himself dead straight on this blue, and it is going to be an end of a break, it would seem, for Mark Allen on just 20 points, I should say, or so, with that red disappearing into the right corner. In the end, didn't get as much of cue action as he actually would have needed. And yet again, will find himself in a position to probably play a safety shot. But which type of safety shot, we're about to find out. And, well, I mean, can he go for the blue and force some sort of angle onto the top part of the table? Surely he hasn't got enough of the positional play. I mean, he can try and go for the brown or black here if he's so desperate to try and give himself a chance of landing on either one of those reds. But in the end, looks like he's just trying to see if there's any plant availability into the right corner or left corner there for him. In the end, we'll get 20 points that I mentioned on the board. And probably will just send the pink towards the left corner. Pushing one of those reds into the pink. And actually playing a really clever shot in terms of the idea. The execution wasn't as perfect. Trying to get the cue ball in behind the black that was quite close to the right corner. But instead, he's left the red on for Zhou Yuelong to try and take on into the left middle. Once again, it's a massive shot for him to take on. If he does, he can't afford to miss it. Because surely he'll leave the same red away for Mark Allen. With so far luck not necessarily being on his side. I think he'll try and go for another red into the left corner. Send the cue ball somewhat safe in behind the black area. Missed that one off the front jaw. So in the end, probably was a smart shot selection. You know, not risk anything here. And just land the cue ball onto the black ball cushion. Give Mark Allen some sort of availability in terms of what he's going to try and do here with the reds available to his name. With the red Zhou Yuelong has just played, has gone towards the green pocket and has actually landed on the right side cushion there, just alongside the bulk line. For now, Mark Allen just looking at the option that he's got ahead of him. And potentially sending one of those reds in towards the left middle. Sending the cue ball in towards the bulk line for good measure. because the red that has gone over the green pocket is still not going to be a threat for now, unless you put the cue ball right underneath it. And Alan actually was in a feisty mood to go for a red into the yellow pocket himself there, and in the end he will leave a red on for Zhou Yuelong. So not necessarily sure it was the right shot there for Mark Allen to try and play, because all of a sudden, as I say, you had to just keep Zhou Yuelong quiet and not give him any sort of invitation, because it only takes one chance. You can click like that and you'll be once again in control of the table or the frame. But for now, he's got a massive red shot now into the right corner that he will miss, and he'll give a couple of reds away to Mark Allen to surely wrap off their sixth frame here. And once again, it has been a frame full of suffering of Zhou Yuelong, full of chances, but in the end, once again, he will come up short, most likely, if Mark Allen makes the most out of the position he lands himself in, with at least 3 of those reds being in brilliant position, and one more being onto the top part of the table that you can try and roll into the yellow pocket there. So now Alan only 3 points behind of Zhou Yuelong to his scoring board, 75 still on the table, but doesn't want to be snookered on this red though, into the left corner. And is he actually going to be snookered on this red? It looks like he is. So change of plans straight away there from Mark Allen. Not something that we've seen a lot from him today. Ran out of position and sort of find himself on the end of a bad positional shot here. So needs to recover well with the rest shot and ultimately get the cue ball into the prime area for one of the colours to try and take on. Will overrun for the blue ball, so yellow to take on, and once again deep screw back on the cue ball and send it back down the table yet again, using the right side cushion to his advantage, and has to miss the middle pocket, of course. Will do that very, very nicely, and now put it to 31 points each, with still 67 on the table. So nothing to separate the two players in terms of the points scored, but of course Mark Allen still finds himself at the table and with a massive chance to try and make even more points, and of course take all of those points out of Zhou Yuelong and put himself with, if not a frame winning break, certainly the one that would put Zhou Yuelong some points behind. And yet again, a very nice shot there from Allen in terms of getting on the black, but not necessarily so much in terms of getting the transition from black to the red here, and finds himself with a rest shot to try and take on into the right corner. Has to take this one carefully and just roll this one in, have the cue ball bounce off the cushion maybe twice there, and go for either bold colours or the blue here. Once again, performance brilliant from Mark Allen. So brown will be the next shot for him to try and take into the green pocket and take one of those reds that I mentioned onto the top part of the table, out of the table itself, and put him some more points clear. Still 51 points on the table, and we're going into the area for Mark Allen that is actually going to be the challenging for the first time in a couple of frames for him. So far getting all the minor obstacles out of the way in the previous frames, and yet again, lovely shot there on the red to roll it into the yellow pocket, land himself nicely on the brown. So probably to go for one more red along the cushion into the green pocket this time around, unless he wants to see the cue ball screw back heavily there for the red into the left corner, which he will do. So not too sure with that shot selection, because he's landed a little bit short on this red right now. Just want to see if I can refresh the broadcast, because it's gone a little bit laggy here with the stream. And back to normal we go. So Mark Allen here to roll the red into the left corner with a rest shot. Doesn't have to force it with a massive shot there, but what a slice of luck here for Mark Allen, as if he needed more of that. I mean, he missed the red into the left corner, but in the end, he's actually managed to fluke it in the opposite corner. And what a game changer this could be, you know. He still would have been ahead there, Mark Allen, but all of a sudden he finds himself with an attempt to try and snooker Zhou Yuelong. And we'll apologise, of course, for the fluke that he got on the red. Zhou Yuelong is still in this frame, but only just now, with him being snookered and actually behind by 19 points. And, you know, as if Mark Allen needed any more luck in this match. And in this frame as well. I mean, 5-1 is such a massive gap for Zhou Yuelong to try and overcome here. And he very much finds himself within touch distance of the gap to try and overcome. Because the first time he hits the red, he's going to have to put it safe. Because if he leaves this red on, I mean, especially with the way the ball colours are, it is going to be a very straightforward ending to this frame number 6. He needs to hit this one first time around and hopefully try and get the red ball safe, nearly fluting himself there. So, would have been the response there to Mark Allen. Instead, he's landed it onto the yellow spot, pocket, I should say, for Allen to try and roll through. Get himself on the ball colours. What a fluke, well, I mean, it is what a fluke and what a time to do that. I was saying yesterday Zhou Yuelong was getting quite a lot of luck to his name, but this time around it is Mark Allen that is getting so much of it. And this time it could be the luck that actually brings him the frame on the board. For now, he still needs to get the red in, and he does. So, a couple of shots away now from making it 5 frames won for Mark Allen, and only one of those won for Zhou Yuelong. So, well, I mean, that is turning into a little bit of a disaster for him, as we only have 2 more frames after this. And, I mean, a fluke that certainly has put Mark Allen into all sorts of equation. And right now on 55 points, so he needs the yellow to be his frame ball and make it a 26 points of a gap. He will. So a break of 7 points will get him over the line, and with all the colours being on their spots, barring the pink here, he'll roll the green and the brown to make sure that this is going to be, well, a demolition job so far, and an absolute battering of Zhou Yuelong here from Mark Allen. GG's in the frame once again here. 6 frame on the board for Mark Allen, and 5 of those, of course, have gone his way. He'll go for a potential total clearance of 32 points if he wants to, but it certainly has been a clearance of Zhou Yuelong so far in this match, and surely needs to win both of those 2 frames that are remaining in this session. I've got absolutely no clue how can I actually try and do that, as Allen there, with a little bit of entertainment, tries to roll the black into the pocket. In the end, it ain't gonna matter, because you'll have a gap of 5 frames to 1 against Zhou Yuelong as he goes for a bathroom break, and certainly a break that he will deserve, ahead of frame number 7 here. Brilliant performance from him. Flawless and sublime. Not much you can say on Zhou Yuelong's side. Once again, you know, he was playing brilliantly against Mark Williams, Barry Hawkins, Mark Selby, Luca Brissell. But he's looking to be on the receiving end of things here in the final. And so far, not really having any sort of answer to the form that Mark Allen finds himself in. Certainly, leaving the best to last, absolute battering so far. Well, as I say, something that we've seen in Saudi Arabia, not so much in Shanghai Masters or Wuhan Open, where Gary Wilson, Sal Godon, and Ali Carter and Karen Wilson barely had 2 frames between each other. Neil Robertson did manage to go 7-2 frames clear of Ronnie O'Sullivan. Still, the Rocket managed to come back to eventually be leading 9 frames to 8. Still managed to lose the decider that time, with Robertson claiming it was the best match he's ever won, surpassing the World Championship victory in 2011. 2010, I should say, not 2011. And, well, let's see. What is Mark Allen going to do here? Has he got any more potential brilliant frame-winning breaks in his pocket? Or is Zhou Yuelong finally going to come back from the shadow of himself so far in the campaign and step up to the game, take his game to the next level, and well, give some sort of a position to Mark Allen? So far, as I say, has been very much a one-way battle in the opening 6 frames. Of course, as I say, very quick opening 6 frames. Only has been 2.5 hours since the match has started. With, I don't even think we've had two hours of actual playing time. We're just getting so much of the breaks in between the frames, and the intermission of 15 minutes as well on top of that. But let's see. Zhou Yuelong needs this frame to avoid an absolute battering going into the evening session, and he needs to start off with a good break-off shot as it is once again lights, camera, action for Zhou Yuelong here to go with a break-off shot and hopefully for himself not leave anything on for Mark Allen as he gets the frame number 7 underway. So quick there in all of them, but especially Mark Allen. I was thinking, and I was a little bit concerned with Mark Allen bringing the safety battle to our hands here, but certainly has managed to bring the best out of himself in terms of the attacking play, and so far overshadow Zhou Yuelong certainly with the performance for the ages here for Mark Allen certainly. As I say, it's been a while since I've seen that sort of domination in the final. Of course, Allen was coming into this final as a favourite, with it being 1.50 to his name, with that 250 in terms of Zhou Yuelong's odds. Don't think it's going to be touching ball here for him, so has to try and cannon into the reds. Try and get himself safe here on the cue ball, get it out of the danger area. Yet again, send it up the table, and the pink is going to be a major factor right now because he has been brought into play. So with yellow as well being taken out of its spot, could be a tactical thing there from Zhou Yuelong. You know, could have been planned to potentially try and put the pink onto the yellow spot, try and use it as a high value colour, as Mark Allen will just ask the referee to potentially remember this position and keep an eye on the cue ball going in between the blue and pink, as he will try to go for a safety shot, put one of those reds quite close to the left corner. In the end, once again, brilliant shot there from Allen, and every single aspect of his game so far has been brilliant. You know, you can't really expect any more from him. Safety has been perfect. As I say, the second frame was always going to be Zhou Yuelong's to lose because he had a perfect chance to himself. He managed to take it from the second time of asking, but ever since, and even in the opening frame, it was just Mark Allen coming up here. He almost like he woke up and chose violence here on Zhou Yuelong, leaving him no chances whatsoever so far in this final. But as I say, you need to create your own chances sometimes. Allen's managed to do that. He's managed to force his opponent into mistakes from the safety play sometimes, but more times than not, it has been Zhou Yuelong being his biggest nightmare and you know, his biggest enemy here so far. Yet again, Mark Allen finds himself playing into the red there and away from the pack. So touching the ball certainly was called there by the referee, and Allen makes usage of that, putting the cue ball right on the black ball cushion. Zhou Yuelong will try and do the opposite of that and send the cue ball onto the bulk area. Try and potentially free up one more red and make it to go quite close to the black there, but doesn't want to cover the entire path of the black though. In the end, lands a really good safety shot there, and actually I think he's snookered Mark Allen here, as he needs to focus on the left hand side of the table, trying to get the cue ball sending towards the top left part of the pack of the reds, but doesn't want to get too close to one of those to be open up for Zhou Yuelong. In the end, he managed to get through all sorts of gaps there for him, and has he left the red into the left middle, Allen certainly doesn't look to be too happy as he walks away from the table, and Zhou Yuelong will have a good look at this, but ultimately I think he will be. Cue ball sent onto the top part of the table yet again, and no real chance for him to try and, well, really get himself on the break here. As, although, once again, brilliant cue ball position. So Zhou Yuelong, the biggest thing that I feel sorry for him, and I have to feel sorry for him because I want to see a very close and competitive final, is his safety play has actually been very good. It's actually the chances that he actually had throughout those 6 frames or so. I mean, you can't really say about the opening frame, but pretty much in every single one of those 4 frames that he's lost after the opening frame, he could have had a chance himself to win the frame. And, you know, you win half of those frames and it's going to be a scoreline of 3-3. But in the end, he finds himself with an absolute mountain to climb. I think you could say that now. And really finds himself with 2 frames to win or a final to lose. because he's certainly not going to overcome the 6-2 gap in my point of view. I know the session in the evening is going to be a new one and potentially could be brand new Zhou and broken Mark Allen, but it just reminds me of a phrase from Ronnie O'Sullivan: you have to probably lose a leg and an arm for you to lose an advantage and just lose all of your form that Allen's actually managed to pick up in the opening session here. Yet again, lands the cue ball nicely on this red into the right corner. So has got his eyes on one more red to try and play a safety off, just about on the lower part of the table. I think he'll try and go into the red. Of course, very similar to the one he's tried to take on earlier in the match and has actually potted it. He's gone on a very significant break ever since and take it away. I think it was framed before there, just before the intermission, but this time he won't make this one. And is he going to give a red away now to Zhou Yuelong yet again here? And it looks like he will. Just how close is that red going to go to the cue ball? Quite close, but still available for Zhou Yuelong to go for into the yellow pocket, if that's the only red that is available to him. And surely the crowd will get massively behind Zhou Yuelong. Well, unless you're a Mark Allen fan, of course. You're not going to do that with your player winning by 5 frames to 1, but needs to make this red in and needs to take it into more of a chance than so far he's managed to. So first part of the task done, with the red disappearing, only just, but in the end, that will do him nicely. So, in terms of the position he's got ahead of himself, he's got a blue to try and roll into the right middle. He also has got some reds to choose from, in fact a lot of reds to choose from, but ultimately the pink is available but only for one shot, and then he'll have to go back on his spot, which is surrounded by the reds. So that's going to be not available for him, and black once again is not necessarily in the best position either. And when he goes back on his spot, looks like he'll be covered up by a handful of reds as well. But now Zhou Yuelong has to focus on what he's got ahead of him and potentially try and be playing for the blue here. I mean, as I say, it depends on how confident is he feeling to try and take these black on along the cushion, and the answer is probably pretty confident still, which is good to see, but he needs to make this black in, roll this one towards the corner pocket, drop this one in nicely, and get himself 14 points on the board now, all of those coming from the break of the current visit to the table now from Zhou Yuelong. And if that black goes through the gap in between those two reds, that's actually going to be very, very handy for him, because that'll give him full freedom there on the black. But yet again, deciding to play the cue ball off the cushion doesn't land perfectly on this black, and the consequences of that is probably going to be the end of a break here, unless he does find a perfect position on the cue ball to try and get the red in between some of those reds in below the pink here. But once again finds himself with a very difficult shot to try and take on, to put himself 22 points clear. And nicely done here yet again by Zhou Yuelong. And very important for him to try and get as many points as possible scored on the current visit to the table. Still only managing a break of 34 since his return from the intermission as his highest break. And right now has got a difficult red into the right corner. Just roll this one in and you'll be on the pink nicely into the left middle. So yet again, nice job there. Please get yourself a frame on the board now. Make it a 5-2 of a scoreline and make it a frame to play for. Frame number 8 there. Put yourself in a lot of the equation there for the evening session. And that was 29 points. After this cue ball, we'll go into the red into the right corner and make that 30 points. So it's looking better for Zhou Yuelong, but ultimately he has got a very kind position that he actually finds himself in, which is why I was very surprised with that shot from Mark Allen, taking a reckless red on into the yellow pocket. Ultimately didn't do himself any favour and actually has given a chance now to Zhou Yuelong to put himself back on the winning ways. Now 37 points clear of Mark Allen. So the bets that he's managed to produce since the intermission. Still, certainly not running out of reds to try and choose from. Roll this one in. Land yourself on the pink. Into the right corner there. And put yourself 38 points still. Still, as I say, in terms of the reds, the pink is still going into the left, middle and the right corner, which is going to be an extra advantage there for Zhou Yuelong. But in terms of reds, he's got plenty of those available. If he just takes them out one by one, he'll be off into the easy side of play. Once again, just moves one of them out of the way. And we'll have a nice little shot on the rest into the right corner. And ultimately, Zhou Yuelong is not looking too bad in this frame right now. But as I say, it's turning into frame 7 and frame 8 are turning into must-win frames now for Zhou Yuelong. Now, yet again, finds himself with a decent red shot, guiding the cue ball on towards the black or the pink here to try and choose from. Probably going to be easier off with the black there in terms of getting the cue ball in behind the reds for the left corner. So, just has to pick his way through those one by one. With the, to be fair, I will give him the fact that the reds spread out quite nicely, but still are going to be in the way of each other slightly. So Zhou Yuelong has to make sure he gets away with that and makes his way through those reds one by one. Yet again here, so how's the cue ball position? It probably is just about perfect there. 52 points, so for the first time since that break of 65 points, we're actually going to see Zhou Yuelong with a break of 50 plus here. And good timing for him. Could be a little bit too late in terms of trying to be back in this session, but still not out of this much just yet. As long as he doesn't lose, well, the remaining two frames, the 7-1 scoreline will certainly be over for him. And we'll make that scoreline of 9-4 very much likely of repeating itself. Achieved 3 years ago at the Northern Ireland Open. And Zhou Yuelong, has he actually landed himself with an easy red to try and go for? Not too sure if he's got one into the left corner. And the shot into the right middle is not going to be perfect in terms of bridging over a red and trying to get himself onto the blue. So, goes back down for the shot and goes up there. And goes back down and goes up yet again. So, not too confident in terms of taking this red on. And will just give himself a little bit of a better angle to try and see how much of room can he actually leave on these blue. With the referee once again leaning forward to make sure that Zhou Yuelong doesn't touch any of those reds with the cue ball. So force the cue ball into the path of the red itself and get it into the middle pocket perfectly there. So the red will disappear and still a marginal angle now on the blue. So of course he was going to always run himself the wrong side of the blue, but ultimately has got a lot of angle to try and get the cue ball back down the table. And get himself 66 points clear right now, with still 75 on the table. So, next red and the color will be a frame ball combination for Zhou Yuelong here. And gets himself with a decent shot in terms of the position on this next red. The penultimate shot to get himself second frame on the board and make it Mark Allen 5, Zhou Yuelong 2 here. As we are going to be heading very close to the third hour started. And yet again, brilliant shot there and well managed by Zhou Yuelong. Had to make that one stick. In the end he did. And he's still on the break now. That has turned into the highest break of the entire match for Zhou Yuelong, surpassing the break in the second frame. But he's still not over the line here. Needs this black to go into the right corner to put himself 74 points clear. There's only 67 on the table. And nicely done there yet again. So it is a frame ball now over the line for Zhou Yuelong, and he can finally breathe a little bit with a little more freedom there to his name. And so one more red will disappear. So certainly frame over and frame to Zhou Yuelong, something that I haven't said too many times throughout this final. In fact, it's only the second time I'll be saying that. But can we see the first century break from Zhou Yuelong in this final? And making the second century break in the match here after Mark Allen producing a brilliant clearance of 132 points in the opening frame. Although Zhou Yuelong has landed himself with a little bit of work to do. And an awkward cut on this red that he will make and manage though, but not get himself on any colour. Unless the pink will go past the blue into the green pocket there. I think he'll try and cut it into the right middle. Looks like the blue can be avoided there by the pink. And Zhou Yuelong needs to execute this shot perfectly. If he is to have a shot at the century break, but in the end, it will stop there. And it is break of 81 points to get himself on the board for the second time in this final. It is now Mark Allen 5, Zhou Yuelong 2, and a must-win frame now for Zhou Yuelong in frame number 8. If he is to put himself back in the equation, I'm not going to say he's going to be back here and he's going to be a favourite all of a sudden with him still being 2 frames down, Mark Allen. But as I say, 6-2 of a scoreline, Mark Allen being a higher seed by far. It's just going to be, if not mission impossible, then mission very, very difficult for Zhou Yuelong to try and climb back in there. Frame number 9 and onwards in the evening session. But for now, we still have one more frame to go ahead of ourselves. Maybe. Still, you never know with the referee announcing the actual frames there. I think I'll have a look to see if it's going to be announced as the final frame of the session. So that I can let you know that we're going to be stopping here. And until at least the second session will get underway in 3 and a bit hours now. 3 and a bit hours time from now. 7 o'clock local time here in England. The referee will get everything set up until the announcement for the 8th frame coming up very, very shortly. And GG, certainly GG's now in frame number 7. Zhou desperately needed this. He desperately needs one more frame though. I know 7-1 of a scoreline would have been over, but 6-2, especially the highest seed like Mark Allen, still feel like it can be over for him in this campaign. And yet, we're going to see some sort of performance from Mark Allen to close it off now with the last frame of the session, potentially. As I say, I've got the sound on right now to hear the crowd noise and just see the announcement from the referee if it is going to be the last frame of the session, or are we going to see one more frame after this? Of course, it does depend on the time that would have been allocated for the first session, and I think you probably should take it as the last frame of the opening session. Yes, it will be the final frame of the session. So 8 frames is always going to take now for the opening session to end. And what a quick turnaround it has been. Not even 3 hours since the match has started. And we're already on the final frame here of the session, as Mark Allen will start it off now. And Zhou Yuelong straight away there has got a decision ahead of himself. Can he try and go for the red into the left corner? That Mark Allen certainly left a lot of room for invitation for him. And talk about Zhou desperately needing the 7th frame. He desperately needs frame number 8 now to put himself back in the equation. But it's not the start that he would have liked, as he'll miss the red. Ultimately, don't think he'll give anything away now to Mark Allen, with the red catching the black and in the end going to be sitting comfortably on the black ball cushion, with the black being out of the game as well. So that's not a positive start in terms of getting through this frame quickly. But ultimately, we still haven't seen any delays in between the frames there, with not necessarily any snooker battles as well. All of the frames that were won by Mark Allen or Zhou Yuelong were won by quite a comfortable margin. So I actually think we're yet to see a player come back from facing too many snookers. I think it was a shot point in one of those frames that Mark Allen actually found himself facing 3 snookers there, in terms of Zhou Yuelong found himself facing, because the gap to Mark Allen was 45 points with only 35 on the table. But this time, it's a good shot there from Allen. And Zhou Yuelong will have a similar sort of shot to try and respond with. Once again, sending the cue ball nicely in behind the yellow. So straight away, acknowledgement from Mark Allen, even though the cue ball hasn't even reached its final point. In the end, lands perfectly on the cushion. So, of course, the professional players can judge the trajectory and the pace of the cue ball when it's coming towards them. With them playing so many of those types of shots in day in, day out in practice. And once again, Mark Allen going for a shot off the cushion that so far has been perfect and very clinical at, as probably can be said about his entire style of game. And these performance in the opening 7 frames, as I say, probably could try and argue about that in the frame. And Yuelong straight away there offering a re-rack. So lovely to see that as well in the final. You know, it was barely a couple of shots in we were in that 8th frame. But ultimately it is going to be once again a re-rack and Mark Allen to take us away into frame number 8. Lovely to see that in the case of both players clearly don't want the game to be slow. Both of them say to each other, you know what, I respect you, and if you are going to win the frame in the attacking approach, so be it, but I don't want to spend 30 minutes or so just trying to roll the cue ball in towards the cluster of reds or just sort of outside of it. Lovely to see the players agreeing so quickly on that, and Mark Allen will start off frame number 8 for the second time, and the re-rack will occur. Something that you don't necessarily see often, especially in this tournament campaign. Probably the first time I've seen with all the matches that I've managed to witness. But lovely to see that in the final with players just agreeing so quickly to each other, and not often you see a re-rack just a couple of shots in. Probably the right decision, as Yuelong once again has got a red lined up into the right corner this time after the break off from Mark Allen. So after missing one into the left corner, is it going to be same story into the right one? Yes, it is. Surely he can't get away from this out of this situation yet again, and he won't, because he'll leave this red away to Mark Allen into the left corner, or he'll cut a couple of more into the right corner if he doesn't like that one. Yuelong knew as soon as he hit that shot, yeah, he was going to just about miss this one. And Mark Allen now has got probably all the benefit of a really nice position ahead of him. As just roll this red in to the corner pocket, try and land yourself on the black there, and well, start off a break that could still prove to be the final in this opening session and set himself up for a lead of 6 frames to 2. Of course, as we have been doing since the quarterfinal stage, we will have a brief 10-15 minutes analysis of the way this match has gone in the opening session. So if you want to stick around for the match overview, even though I will probably call it a session 1 overview, because the match is not going to be over, even with it being the scoreline of 6 frames to 2. But Mark Allen is still working hard to make that scoreline a reality for himself. Rolls the red into the right corner yet again here. So in terms of the reds that are available to him straight away, you've got 3 reds being in open play, and a potential plans of 2 more of those that if you can try and split up, you can try and make 16 points more out of. So for now, Allen will eliminate the first 2 reds with the black here, gets himself 16 points on the board. And remember, every single time Mark Allen was the first player to have a chance of a break in any of the 7 frames previously. He has gone on to win 5 out of those. Sorry, he's gone on to win every single one of those, with those frames reaching the number of 5 to this point. But yet again, brilliant shot selection there as he goes for a little bit of a difficult red into the corner, yet finds himself in a perfect position on the black here. And yet again, just making it look so easy here, and almost looks like he's putting no effort to it. Once again, we'll have so many reds to try and put into the right middle if he wants to. 24 points on the board already. Deep screw potentially now into the black if he wants to, but he can always try and go for the top spin and landing on the top side of the blue to get himself lined up nicely for a shot into the left middle. So we'll now choose a couple of reds that are available to him. And yet again, just rolls this one in. And no real issues in terms of the positional side of play. Yet again, as I say, with him playing into the reds, he actually finds himself so many times just clearing up one or two more there, give himself a couple of shots available. And ultimately, if he keeps doing that, he doesn't necessarily even have to go into the bunch of reds. He can just try and stick around the black spot for the time being, accumulate all the reds that are available to him, and then, you know, all of a sudden you only have 7 reds or so to try and split up. You can do that either from the black or the blue, with those being quite condensed there, but still having the gaps in between for Mark Allen to try and get to. For the moment, and for the time being, you'll have a little bit more time to have a think about this black, as it looks like he was going to go for the shot straight away. In the end, he hesitates, and so probably we'll just think of one more shot ahead now. And is he going to try and play through this cue ball to land himself on the right middle shot yet again, or is he actually going to try and approach the red with a screw back shot? In the end, he will go for the red into the right middle, line himself up for the blue one more time, potentially line up on the red into the left corner pocket. So this one is not an easy shot though, because of an angle that the cue ball finds himself with. So of course has to go with a lot of backspin here to slow down the cue ball and take as much momentum out of it as possible. Play the blue into the right middle one more time here, and try and force the cue ball down the table yet again, potentially using that black ball cushion if he wants to, but instead he's decided to go into the reds, and he's got the pink on the way in. I'm not sure whether that was planned, but it certainly has given him a massive head start here, as he's got at least one more red to try and play for. To be fair, I'm not necessarily sure if he's got anything after that, but that will be a shot for him to try and consider, and of course that will massively influence the shot selection of which color to try and play for here. I think he will go for the black and try and send the cue ball up the table into the cluster of red to try and line one of those into the right corner. I think that's going to be the easiest shot for him to try and select. You can always try and go for a similar shot to the one he just played and screw back on the cue ball massively for the blue there into the right corner. Into the right middle, pardon, but instead he's gone far over that spot, and he's actually landed himself quite a nice positional shot on the green here. He can try and go for the yellow if he wants to as well, but not necessarily going to land perfectly on either one of those reds at ease, because a lot of power of the cue will have to go into this cue ball, and a lot of backspin certainly to follow up after the shot on the green. Doesn't want to catch the blue though, and he will. So that will put some more distance in between the cue ball and the red into the left corner. And as I say, it's such a massive frame for Zhou Yuelong, but it's also massive from Mark Allen's point of view. When you get yourself 6-2 ahead, you're only 3 frames away from winning the whole thing here. And, you know, it's certainly on the verge of basically being on the run for repeating the same scoreline as it was the last time those two met in the ranking final in Northern Ireland 3 years ago, with that match ending with a scoreline of 9 frames to 4 in favour of Mark Allen. And once again has one more shot with the rest successful to his name, so making 7 out of 7 of those, but not necessarily the best shot to get on the red into the left corner after this yellow. So certainly will need a rest and potentially an extension. Not even too sure if he's actually going to try and attempt this red into the corner pocket. Certainly not going to be easy for him if he does. But ultimately I think he probably will be quite happy with himself, getting 51 points on the board and just getting a safety side of things, playing the cue ball in towards the top part of the table. So one more time and one more shot needed for him. If he wants to stay in the break, he needs to roll the red into the corner pocket, and he will do that. So certainly will stay on the break for one more shot. And I can't provide you with the information if he's got any more reds to try and land on. I would probably say he hasn't. But with the way he's approached that shot, probably has got at least one of those that he can try and eke out here. Yes, he blows on the tip of the cue. So he's got himself in a position to try and choose from the brown or yellow to send the cue ball down the table yet again. Land himself up for a shot into the right corner. And, well, hopefully see himself either split up the reds to an extent that he's got one of those available, or try and find a perfect positional shot to land on either one of those. But in the end, it looks like the break of that certainly took a lot of time and a lot of will and power from Mark Allen is going to come to an end with the 54 points scored. Still 75 points on the table. Is he going to try and take the red into the middle? I don't think he will. And just send the cue ball up the table, in behind the yellow, to try and close off the right-hand side of the table, which sees a red there now. Brilliant shot yet again from Mark Allen. Certainly a clever one. Sending the red onto the right-hand side of the table, so making a clearance for Zhou if there is going to come. A little bit more difficult with the black being on the black ball cushion himself, so far from his spot. And the clearance that is possible here from Zhou Yuelong, but certainly not going to be easy, with him for now finding and trying to look for an introduction into this break. So seeing a red potentially into the left corner, trying to use a plant to take his advantage, but in the end I think too much pace there on the cue ball and way too much room for Mark Allen to play a safety shot. Don't think he's left a shot on for Mark Allen into the right corner, so that's I suppose a positive in itself, but has to take this one with a smart approach, and certainly the one that will see Mark Allen get away with the shot and try and send the cue ball up the table yet again here. So play the red into one another there, send one of those reds into the right hand side of the table yet again. Clever shot there from Allen, and just making that clearance seem impossible right now for Zhou Yuelong. Certainly getting the match time a little bit higher here, and it looked like it was going to be Mark Allen running away with it and making it a 6-2 advantage to his name. Still, as I say, has to work for that, with him being a couple of reds away from doing that. As I say, a red colour and a red combination will get him over the frame ball, with still 59 on the table being available. Should Allen actually take those two reds plus a colour out of the table. But for now, Zhou Yuelong is looking for an introduction for himself, and hopefully he will have one more chance to try and come back in this frame and at least force it. Mark Allen to play a lot more safety shots and maybe a lot more attacking shots here. So for now, you'll probably send the red into the right cushion, send the cue ball up the table and in towards the brown here. Lovely stuff yet again here. So the cue ball will be in behind the green for the in terms of covering the two reds underneath the pink, which Mark Allen could have gone for a safety shot on. But ultimately, I don't think he's covered enough of the red into the right corner. Of course, what feels like a massive frame ball now, of course, for Mark Allen. Because should he land on the colour after this red, it surely is going to be frame and a 6-2 lead now to his advantage. But ultimately, he will miss a red. And is it going to be one more chance now for Zhou Yuelong? Surely a chance that Zhou Yuelong has to take on and has to make, well, I would say full advantage, but with the way the reds spread out, probably neither of them really are going to be easy to land on. For now, it's a mid-range shot into the right corner. It's nicely set up for Zhou Yuelong to just take this one in, and he will. So at least one more chance now for Zhou Yuelong to give himself a third frame on the board and make it Mark Allen 5, Zhou 3 here. For now, take those three reds out of the game is going to be the minor task for Zhou Yuelong here. The first couple of those two to disappear into the right corner, you would have thought. And then take one more into the right middle and try and do something with those two reds resting on the right side cushion at the moment. So let's start off with the first red disappearing into the right corner, land himself on the pink or blue. Depends on which one Zhou is actually going to prefer here. You'll go for the for the pink into the right middle, line himself up for a red into the left corner. Once again, bring the cue ball up the table and onto the cue ball here. So Zhou Yuelong is now behind by 46 points. Still 59 on the table, so he's not going to be facing an issue in terms of points. But the important thing I actually think he might be facing himself with is going to be the decision, is he actually going to need the black that he's currently resting on the black ball cushion? Because landing on this black from the pink is not going to be an easy task for Zhou Yuelong to try and do. And as he actually landed himself in a little bit of trouble here, he'll go around the red to see if he can see enough of this red. And he hasn't got a backup option yet again here, so I mean, he better see enough of this red, or he's going to find himself scoring only 14 points on the break, and the break finishing off here sooner than he would have expected. So in the end, he will get through to that red, and he actually will line himself up nicely for the pink to go into the same corner pocket. So very close to eliminating the 3 reds that were in open position straight away. With the angle on the pink will get him nicely onto one more red into the right middle, and surely will get him through any sort of discomfort, and line himself up with one more shot to try and take on, until massive adjustments will have to be taken place in terms of those 2 reds being on the right side of the cushion. So Zhou Yuelong still 33 points behind with 51 on the table, as you can see on the dashboard. And one more red to try and take on into the right middle, and then which color does he try and land on? Surely that's going to be pink here. I mean, he's looking for a shot on the blue, but 2 cushion into the reds, but you're going to be going straight into those reds, and I can't really see himself getting so much power on this cue ball that you actually try and free up a red that is closer to the right middle onto the left middle there. But as I say, I'm not sure how he's going to approach to this shot. Certainly going to take a red into the right middle right now, but which color is he going to try and play after this one? As I say, I actually am leaning towards stunning the cue ball onto the pink there into the left corner, trying to get a lot of topspin on the cue ball, roll the pink in with some sort of power, but not too much of that, and try and get in behind one of those reds from the right hand side, and try and get one of those in towards the middle area. But yet again, Zhou Yuelong finds himself going for the blue here, you would have thought, but I'll be honest with you, I've got no idea what his plan is going to be, and with the body language that he's showing, he doesn't seem to be too sure either. You know, he can't take the pink on into the right corner now because he's landed very straight on this shot, and he can't really take the blue into the right middle because he'll be going straight to the pink there. As I say, I'm not too sure what I'm seeing here, and why has he gone for the shot in the first place? Because I can't see Zhou Yuelong avoiding the pink if he goes for the blue here. So if he pots the blue into the right middle, that's absolutely fine. But how is he going to make the cue ball go in towards the reds? Same question can be asked about the pink here, with him actually landing on the wrong side of pink. So it's not necessarily straight on this one, but with the angle on this pink actually forcing the cue ball away from the reds, it's going to have to be a lot of topspin here, or he just has to settle for, you know, a break of 28 points, and that's going to be it for him. What has been your success in this tournament's prediction so far? Not so good. Not so good. I think I managed to get Selby right. I think I got the Brazil against Zhou Yuelong wrong. I managed to predict quite a few wins for Selby there. I managed to predict Jackson Page against Sean Murphy correctly. And Wu Yize against Mark Selby I managed to get as well. So I would say it probably was around 50-50 there. But good question there. So Zhou Yuelong will find himself playing a safety shot here. So not necessarily even taking, well, any of these runs on really. And just leaving Mark Allen with a safety shot to play. So also play right now in this frame. Still 26 points advantage to Mark Allen. And some people in the crowd certainly getting a little bit of heat in their face Well, it certainly has been the heat of the action with Mark Allen and Zhou Yuelong putting on a great show so far. Still, I would say it has been Mark Allen's show, with Zhou Yuelong having a little feature next to his name. But let's see. Mark Allen certainly will be going into the second session as the favourite for the entire final. But still can be a massive difference maker if he's going to come into the session with a scoreline of 6 frames to 2. Up against, sort of him going into that session with a scoreline of 5 frames to 3 then. In the end, he has gone for the shot into the right corner. Probably the wrong shot for him to try and approach in terms of the safety battle. But ultimately not going to give anything easy now to Zhou Yuelong. As probably just roll the red into the other one and send the cue ball in towards the bulk area. Try and get as little angle in between the cue ball and the reds as possible. Decent shot, but gets too much of an angle there. I think it's possible for Mark Allen just to send the red away from the pack there. And sort of get the cue ball once again in behind the brown. Or somewhere around that area. For now though, he still has got 2 reds to try and deal with. In terms of the points, so 43 points available. So Mark Allen is 26 points ahead. So if he's taking this red with the black there, he'll put himself for 34 points clear. So he's not going to be over the line with without the second red. So he needs both of these reds. And that makes life a lot easier for Zhou Yuelong, to be fair, because apart from those 2 reds, the bold colours are all on the spots. The pink is pretty much on his spot, and the blue is still potable into the left middle, and the black being the only other issue here on the table. So still, I think it's a lot to play now in this frame. Short time for Mark Allen right now is taking over a minute here, as he's going to try and get as little contact as possible on this red, and doesn't necessarily mind on pushing the green towards the bulk area. So that's one more colour out of its spot and a potential trouble there for Zhou Yuelong. I think it would have been a tactical thing surely for Mark Allen, try and get some of those colours safe. And of course now behind 26 points Zhou Yuelong, with 43 on the table. Mark Allen actually was standing there, but in the end he said, no, I'm not going to wait for you around if it's going to be more than 30 seconds, and I'm going to take a sit in my chair, as it is the final frame. So the energy is not necessarily going to be at its highest point for either one of those two, especially Mark Allen. All the deciders he had to play, getting maximum amount of frames into the table time, of course, and Zhou Yuelong not getting happy with the tablecloth yet again. So probably the first real time we've seen one of the players complain about the condition of the table, and you probably can understand why, because with the line of that shot and approach it's taken, and he says come on there, and it's a little bit of a joke there. It probably is, but there's not a lot you can do about that. Yet again he'll play the cue ball into the reds, but this time we'll go for a cushion first shot. Doesn't want to misjudge the power here, of course, and he won't. Had he done that, he would have been given a warning there by Kevin Dubrovsky. And had he missed the 2 reds available to him for him to see, for the third time of asking, of course, it would have been a frame awarded to Mark Allen, with the 3 miss rule here very much taking the place. So far, Mark Allen yet again finds a decent way to get himself out of trouble, send the cue ball up the table. A lot of distance there in between the cue ball and the target reds. Very close yet again now, Zhou Yuelong to losing yet another frame, and wants to make sure this safety shot is going to be executed perfectly, and it won't be, because you'll catch a massive double kiss here, and potentially leaves this red on here for Mark Allen. And of course that foul and 4 points given away changes the picture massively, because Mark Allen, if he gets this red in with a very expensive colour like a black or pink, you will be away in this frame and over the line in terms of getting the frame ball out of the way. Right now he's getting himself 31 points clear. So the brown that he's got available will put him 35 points clear. Doesn't necessarily want to give Zhou Yuelong a chance to tie. So does he take the pink into the right corner for a more difficult of a shot there? But just get himself over the line. Surely that's the risk that he's worth taking on. Or do you just get yourself equal on points? Zhou to win by 9 frames to 8. I mean, if he is going to be losing by 6 frames to 2, it will be a hell of a comeback. And I certainly can't see that one coming. 5-3, probably, yeah. 9-7, 9-8. Zhou Yuelong still can see that coming. But if Alan wins this frame, which he certainly looks to be on the verge of doing right now, with deciding to go for the brown and carrying the cue ball purposely into the yellow to get that one out of the position as well. So the brown and the pink, probably the only 2 colours that are currently on their spots, with the yellow, green being the 2 that are majorly impacted there and are out of position badly. For now, Mark Allen once again will try and cross double this thread into the corner. Actually, I think you'll go for the pot there and also get the cue ball very, very safe there. So, very important to say, 35 points in between Zhou Yuelong and Mark Allen and 35 on the table here. So, if it is going to be Zhou Yuelong winning this match by 9 frames to 8, as Zhou has suggested, he needs to make sure he gets himself a frame on the board, and that doesn't look likely right now, with I think him actually giving the red into the left middle. So Mark Allen, all he has to do is to roll this one into the left middle pocket and surely be away. And Zhou Yuelong will offer his hand, and a handshake between the players, as Mark Allen will get himself a very healthy lead indeed, and 6-2 advantage in terms of frames for Mark Allen, as Zhou Yuelong will just show once again Mark Allen a little bit of a showing off there, as he just shows how much of a mess this table is. I mean, certainly not being happy with the organisers of the table that have actually done something about this cloth. It will be, though, Mark Allen to take a very healthy lead into the second session of 6 frames to 2. So we're going to go through frame by frame here in terms of what has happened in the opening session, but it certainly is good game, and game over in session 1 here. We'll be back in action in 2.5 hours time with 7 o'clock, well, kickoff you might call it, in session 2 in between Zhou Yuelong and Mark Allen. Zhou Yuelong having a massive mountain ahead of him to try and climb. Mark Allen being only 3 frames away from claiming his 12th ranking title win. Right then, let's go through this session 1 frame by frame. Massive domination, and massive congratulations to Mark Allen in terms of taking this session 1 over and just winning it really comprehensively there. The first frame was won by him, and it was a brilliant century break, still the highest frame and the highest century break that we've seen in this final, and the only century break really, with Zhou Yuelong not being able to perform on the level of Mark Allen so far. But of course, a break and a clearance of 132 points. What a perfect way for Mark Allen to start off the session here. What a session. I don't think anyone expected dominance from Allen in the first session. Yeah, probably, especially with him being the comeback king throughout this tournament. I actually thought it was going to be one comeback too many for him to try and pull off here, but it certainly doesn't look like he's going to have to work for the comeback here, as it's Zhou Yuelong that has got a massive mountain ahead of him for him to try and climb in the second session, evening here in Brentwood. And as we move on to the second frame, it actually has been a decent performance from Zhou Yuelong. He managed to take the game to Mark Allen there and sort of say, I am going to try and take the game to you. I'm going to try and compete with you on level terms. And he has managed to produce a break of 65 points in the second frame. You know, he was on the potential chance for a maximum break at some point, but missed an easy black into the left corner. Gave away a chance to Mark Allen, which ultimately still didn't lead to anything. And it was a 1 frame each from Zhou Yuelong after the second frame was over, and it looked like it was going to be, one of those finals that, you take 2 frames, I'm going to take 2 frames, you take 1, I take 1, and we're just going to exchange those frames one by one. But ultimately, after that, we've seen 3 frames won there by Mark Allen, and he's managed to keep Zhou Yuelong very quiet in all of those ones. But ultimately, Allen was clinical and critical of his chances, but Zhou Yuelong had his own chances. In the frame 3, 4, 5, even though, let's talk about 3 and 4, because those two were before the intermission. In frame number 3, Zhou Yuelong was the first player to have a chance, same as in frame number 4. But ultimately what happens, he gets himself 30 points clear of Mark Allen. He still leaves around 100 points on the table. And it wasn't like he played a safety shot away. He missed a positional shot, and he's still gone for a risky red or a risky color into the middle or the corner pocket. And that has cost him dearly. Because had he been more patient and more clinical with the chances that he had, and let's be honest and let's be clear here, the chances that Zhou Yuelong had in those opening 8 frames probably have been the better chances of the 2 players. Mark Allen has managed to make the most and the most out of the chances that he had ahead of himself. Within 6 frames, and majority of them being dominated by Mark Allen, I mean, it probably would be a little bit of an understatement to say it's been a good performance. It's been a brilliant performance for Mark Allen, but ultimately, Zhou Yuelong had to go into the second mini session with him improving on his performance, and he hasn't done that. He hasn't done that, and the mission minimum and task minimum would have been for him to lose the opening session by 3 frames to 1 and take the second one by 2 frames each. That hasn't happened, and he's actually seen him lose 1 more frame after the intermission straight away. In the end, it was 4 frames on the bounce there for Mark Allen, so he won 2 frames until the intermission started and 2 frames after the intermission. And yet again, you have to go back to Zhou Yuelong being nicely on the black into the right corner in frame number 5 and just running himself out of position for 1 more red into the right corner and just not being clinical yet again. Allen gets himself a chance and manages to dispatch that one brilliantly. All of a sudden, he's got 4-1 lead to his name. 5-1 was a brilliant performance for Mark Allen, certainly keeping Zhou Yuelong very quiet there with a brilliant long shot in the making. And all of a sudden, he gets himself 5-1 lead. It's a brilliant lead, and it's the one that he has to just sort of try and keep until the 9th frame will start. So he can afford to lose 1 frame, and he can afford to win 1 frame. In the end, it's exactly what he's done. 7th frame. Decent performance yet again from Zhou Yuelong. Finally gets himself a break that was good enough to win the frame in a single visit, with him doing a break of 81 points. But in the end, it is still a 5-2 of a scoreline. And I said it was a must-win frame number 8 for Zhou Yuelong, and he lost that one. And ultimately, Allen can be very proud and very happy with himself, as he will lead into the second evening session with a massive head start of 4 frames, with him being only 3 frames away from clinching the title here and English Open here in Brentwood, and ultimately making it the 6th time for Zhou Yuelong's career that he will lose a ranking event title. And still the scoreline of 3 years ago, it was Northern Ireland, 9 frames to 4, and I said that at some point Mark Allen managed to win 5 frames on the bounce there. Well, he's already managed to win 4 here. It was 1 frame each, and all of a sudden, 4 frames later, it was 5-1 advantage to Mark Allen. Zhou Yuelong has got a massive task ahead of him in the 9th frame and onwards. But until then, it is Mark Allen's show. And it's certainly been a brilliant session for the ages and for the neutral spectator to see, as well as Mark Allen's spectator, of course, with him taking a comfortable lead into the 9th frame. Well, we're going to end it there, and we're going to resume the action in just over 2.5 hours' time. Make sure to tune in for the final session of the English Open, the tournament that has been all about comeback. Could we see one more comeback from Zhou Yuelong in the later stages? We'll have to wait and see on that one. For now, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to hit the like on your way out. Subscribe to the channel for more content like this. And I'll speak to you very soon in just over 2.5 hours' time for the final session here in Brentwood.